Hey everyone, how's it going? It's Tuesday. Welcome to the Tuesday JavaScript Fundamentals and Code Review. Thanks for coming by. I see we got a few people in chat already. Thank you so much for coming by. Carbon, Wonderfilled. It's a great day, right? It's a great day for learning some JavaScript and HTML and CSS and front-end frameworks and Node. Anything we want to learn, let's give it a shot. Why not? Wonderfilled says, good afternoon once again. Absolutely. Amped for the back end. That is great, Wonderfilled. I am so glad to hear that. Amped for the back end isn't something we always hear. A lot of people are a little bit afraid of it. So I'm glad to hear that you're amped for it. Sounds great. I'm amped for the back end as well. I've got a little experience on it already, so that's good. Coming in with a little bit of experience, so I should be able to help people with some of their pain points starting out. I'm excited for that. How's your day going, Wonderfilled? Let's get this stream started right. Ask everyone how their day's going. Oh, and this is my wife's lovely sloth mug. Got a little sloth hanging over the side. Aw, it's gorgeous. Wonderfilled asks, what have you been working on recently? Good question, Wonderfilled. Thank you for asking. I really appreciate it. Let's check it out. So over here, I've got some React work I'm doing. I'm doing some React work where I'm building a game score tracker. Whatever game you're playing, you track wins or scores of some type. That's what I'm building. It's a treehouse project. So I'm just hopping into it now. It's nothing too crazy. Nothing too crazy. Uh-oh. Do I have... Oh, there we go. I haven't added any state to it, so we haven't gotten to the functionality part where we go ahead and change these scores. But not just there yet. Not just there yet. Hey, Tony! What's up, Tony Diamond? How's it going? Wonderful. It says looking clean. Yeah, I didn't do the CSS for this. This was a boilerplate. I don't want to take too much credit. I'm just learning, so this is a boilerplate right now. I'll always be honest with y'all. Not a good designer right here. Not a good designer. Good developer. Get me for that development. I'm a good dev, not a good designer. I'm gonna be super honest. I'll pass that work on to the person who does it well. And I'll do my part super well. Tony says, what exactly is React used for? Tony, React is used in order to create dynamic web pages. You create dynamic web apps, and you can use it on other devices to create dynamic native apps. You got React Native, which works on iOS and Android. What it does is allows us to track, the big draws of it are, one, it allows us to reuse HTML like these. All of these things right here where I have Gil, Treasure, Ashley, and James, those are all like a template I created called a component. And I fed the information in, and then it created, it's modular. It created each of these with the information I gave it. So we've changed HTML into kind of a modular thing. So that's good. We like that. That saves work for us. And then, once I get the functionality working, see, like this players is wrong. I haven't set it I haven't learned how to make it track state. But what state is where your application's structure or data that you're using changes over time. And you're able to take those changes in the data and use them very easily in your components, in your DOM. those are the big things that make React really cool. So once I do learn, which I'm on that lesson now about switching things over to a stateful tracking of data, that's going to be a big help. Makes things very easy for us. Wonderfield says, I got another good chat with a mutual friend who is quite high up in SWE at LinkedIn. Very nice. He mentioned how so much of their teams are terrible with CSS and anything that is front end for the most part. Yeah, I can imagine. Yeah, I actually don't like LinkedIn's UI. I don't like LinkedIn's UI very much, and I can't imagine that they have a tough time with CSS and anything that is front end. That makes sense. That makes a lot of sense. I could think of a few improvements for LinkedIn's UI, and maybe I'll talk to him. Maybe I'll get a job over there. Send a message to LinkedIn being like, listen, your UI is not great. We got a little work to do here, okay? I'm not going to design it. You need to hire a designer. But I'll tell you how your UI is not great. And I'll fix it. Fuck you, baby. Wonderfield said, and he noted for full stack how little CSS HTML is asked about in interviews. Food for thought. Yeah, great. I mean, great for me, not great for the product. CSS and HTML are super important. As you can see, how their teams are terrible with CSS and anything that's front end. I think that it's, and this is something that I see a lot in the dev community, and I don't want to act like I'm some kind of hardcore veteran in the dev community, but I do see a lot of front end bashing, and I will never bash someone who's good at CSS and HTML, because guess what? I'm not. I'm not good at CSS and HTML, and I'm never going to consider myself a real programmer or something because I'm full stack or prefer the back end. But a lot of people out there do. It's our job, all of us, to reject that. Front-end developers are real developers. They have an incredibly difficult job that I'm not capable of. They have to learn a whole bunch about design that I'm not capable of. And they deserve everyone's respect. I appreciate every front-end developer who's out there handling the shit that I don't want to do and that I am not good at. Especially the people who enjoy it. They don't deserve to be knocked down for it, for sure. Wonderfield says, completely agree, and those of us who consider ourselves pretty picky / detail-oriented end users, the quality stuff is always appreciated. Exactly. I love a good design. I love interacting with a cool or good design. I fucking love it. It's so much fun. And front-end developers had the biggest hand in making that really cool design. Of course, the back end has their job in creating really good functionality so you don't hit breaks or anything. But the front-end person is the front. They're the front-facing person at that company, truly. They do the front-facing work that people can look at and scrutinize, and it's a shame that they get beat up on by back-end devs. It's unfair. It's totally unfair. I think it's that whole lower barrier to entry type of thing, and there's not as much math on the front end or math like programming. It's a different kind of programming, I guess. And I think that those people who really love math and think of themselves as superior kind of really take that to heart, that the front end isn't the same as them, which is ridiculous. Mr. Overzealous. Hey, thanks for coming by the chat, Mr. Overzealous. How you doing? Are you part of the 100 Devs community? If not, let me know how you found the stream. I'd really appreciate it. Mr. Overzealous says, there was a post I read about a guy who worked multiple of the warehouse positions at Amazon and found that each group had complaints about the others, and it generally came from not understanding their role or what they were instructed to do. Very interesting. That's very interesting, Mr. Overzealous. It's almost like continuing education it's almost like continuing education is super important to creating a very healthy ecosystem for everyone. Continuing education about every aspect of a business, even if you don't work in that department of that business or that role in that business. That continuing education and understanding the grand scope of what a business is meant to accomplish and having a hand in it all seem very important. Which are things that I'm an advocate for, is that everybody, a more horizontal power structure where people get to decide, oh, this is what I would like this role to accomplish. Being able to ask questions, very important things. I'm actually starting to think I might be good in a developer relations position, a position that is also hated, that gets a lot of hate, just like front-end developers for doing nothing or whatever. I think developer relations might be where I should be, being able to organize all this stuff, or developer advocate, where I can, break down those barriers between different departments. That would be very cool. Wonderfield said, yeah, this friend also noted that the total compensation between front and back is pretty equal. Just like you said, there's like a connotation that the front end is somehow less important. Yeah, damn. That's so bad. That's so bad. It comes from people being narrow-minded and short-sighted. And I can't say that that's like uncommon or like not reflective of society as a whole. Yeah, it seems pretty reflective of our society just in general. Maybe we need to do something about that. That needs to be like something that we as a society have to decide needs to be tackled. We can tackle it at our companies, but if it continues to happen outside of companies, it's just going to leak in to every aspect of our lives. Mr. Overzealous says, I'm good, thanks, and I'm with 100 devs. That's great, Mr. Overzealous. I'm sorry I haven't seen your name before or remembered your name. It's really tough. There's a lot of people in 100 devs. Can you guys believe that there's over 300 live viewers on Leon's stream every stream he runs? And I think there was almost 300 for most of the time on that Sunday review. That 6-hour review! I wasn't there the whole time. You can blame me for not being at 300. I was only there for some of it. I had shit to do. I had to learn React. I had to learn this stuff over here. Oh, man. Hey, Kainu, Dustin, how's it going? Kainu says, yeah, it's crazy. Yeah, it's pretty tough. Yes. Butt hurt. Yeah. Sitting that long can do that. I heard Leon had some trouble getting to the most recent JavaScript problems too. Just a little bit of time issue. A little bit of issue in the time. Heard that it was mostly CSS and HTML review, and then you got some JavaScript like there at the end. Maybe a third of the time was JavaScript, which was probably not great. That's probably where most people's pain points were in JavaScript, which I feel sorry for y'all. I'm sorry you didn't get that content that you needed right then. If you need me to do that content, feel free. Feel free to ask about some of that content that you're having trouble with. Sometimes that happens. You saw in my last stream that I had shitty time management. Time management is fucking hard, especially in a live interaction like this. Time management is hard as fuck. It's tough. Mr. Overzealous says, you're good, I'm a lurker. I caught up this last week, though. That's great, Mr. Overzealous. If you got any questions, let me know. Let me know if you got questions. Let me know if you got any questions. Kind of said should have been broken down into 2 streams, I feel. Well, we got time. People are on time limits, Sunday is usually a day that most people have off. So he was like, let's do it. Let's do it on Sunday. Yeah, I would have probably broken it up still, but I've got a bunch of time. He has to run 2 things. He has to run 100 devs and resilient coders. He's got a lot on his plate. I'm starting to understand, his situation and how some of those things can fall through the cracks. It's a lot. It's a lot, especially when you're doing it for free, It's tough. Bombaloni, good morning. What are you thinking of working on today? Yeah, good morning to you, Bombaloni. I guess now it's afternoon. I usually start in the morning, but now I'm starting at noon from now on, so it's noon now. Good afternoon to you also, Bombaloni. And today I think right now I don't have anything specific to work on. If anyone has any suggestions, I'm happy to take on those suggestions. I wonder if I should hop in and work on I wonder if I should hop in and work on that API that Veronica and Knox brought by. I could always hop on and do some more work with that. I could talk about functions and function returns and pure functions. I know I've been noticing a lot of people have been having trouble understanding functions in general. Just, parameters. Returns, trying to keep our functions pure, delegating duties in a function. These seem to be some of the pain points that I've seen people asking about a lot. So I could always talk about those, or I could hop in and work on that Pokemon API so we can kind of go through the logic of nested data structures. Go ahead and everybody in chat, just go ahead and let me know what you want to see, me work on. We got those two options. We can always do something else. Hey, if anyone out there, I usually give this call out a little earlier. I should have said it earlier. If you got some code, drop it. If you want something to work on, let's do it. Drop some code in there. Tell me, I gave you a couple options. Tell me which option you want. Do you want to show something off? If you've been working on a project and you're really proud of it, bring it by. Let's show it off. I'm always happy to show off projects. Tiff brought her page for her model friend and we got to see some boobies. So, bring it on by. I'll show it off. It's got boobies, great. The anatomy should be okay on Twitch. Let's see. So Kainu says raise his hand, yep, but I don't know what exactly. Which one did you want, Kainu? Bombaloni says recursion is still a bit tricky, calling the same function back from within the function. Bombaloni, how much do you understand scope? How much do you understand higher order functions? And how much do you understand using parameters and function returns? Because those are all very integral to understanding recursion. Dr. Dean Bull says, I'm working on horoscope stuff right now, trying to make the images clickable. That's cool. That's cool, Bull. Absolutely. Hey, Bull, what you should do with making the images clickable, wrap each image in an anchor tag. Then you'll be good. Kainu says, oh, just sucking at functions in general. Yeah, functions are tough. Bombaloni says parameters and returns and scope I get. Well, scope is very important then. We're going to have to talk about scope still. If you're having trouble with scope, I think it's very important that we I'm sorry, you say you understand scope, but if you're having trouble with recursion, it's probably scope related. The fact that you're calling the same function from within the function, scope is the biggest part of that. WCGN says, old joke, to understand recursion, you have to understand recursion. I like that joke. I like that joke a lot. But it is truly about scope. Recursion is truly about scope. That's the trick. That's the trick in it. Kainu pointed us over to Pixel True, which Kainu said has some great SVG artwork. That's great. Let's go ahead and check out Pixel True real quick. Let's check out some cool SVG artwork. It took a while to load there. It was a long load on that page. So True Unlimited. Very cool. I would say, oh yeah, look at that. That's some pretty involved SVG artwork. Very cool. Very cool. I usually use Undraw for my SVG artwork. There was one other one I used. I don't have the link in front of me. Tony says, your tabs give me anxiety. Oh, Tony. Oh, Tony, you haven't seen anything. I'm gonna pull up. Look at, I got all these Chrome tabs right here, and each of them has equal, if not more. Each of these windows has equal, if not more, tabs in it. So take that anxiety, ball it up real good, and then just hold on to it forever. Tiff, thank you for coming by. What up, what up, what up? Tony says, can't do it, dog. Rambo Sweet says, why so many? Well, Rambo, because I have shit that I need to look at. It's usually in relation to whatever I'm working on. I have Reptar says, are you even a real developer if you ain't got multiple tabs on multiple windows, on multiple screens? That's exactly right. So all of this is related to what I'm working on. I've got a link to my CDN in case I need a refresher on how to get the CDN links in for React. I've got a link to the React.js homepage, which I probably don't need anymore. This one is Thinking in React, which is starting a mock. Lots of good information there. I've got some resources. I left this open for functional programming with React because I want to stay away from object-oriented programming, even though that's the track I'm on right now. This is the best resource I found so far, which I'm halfway through, which is functional programming in React. I got React hooks here. A lot of, and people have been asking me about functional programming with React, so I got a lot of resources that I found useful open. We got a specific one on components. This is my Babel transpiler. Yeah, lots of all those tabs are related right there. Let's see, what do we got? Make sure I'm getting everybody. Code Wars are great. Wonderfield says Code Wars are a great workout, especially with the fundamentals. I've been trying to knock out 3 to 5 a day and then push to GitHub. That's great, Wonderfield. That's excellent. Bombaloni, that was in response to Bombaloni saying, I'm finding Code Wars to be helpful. That's great. That's great. Yeah, it teaches you some interesting methods. You see a lot of ways that other developers are solving problems. Let's see. Tony Diamond says, I keep it max 3 anything. I'm not using... anything I'm not using gets stuck in the favorites and opened as needed, or I'll keep all my tabs on one screen and drag as needed to the main screen. You know what I found out, Tony? I used to do that too, shove them in my favorites, but I don't go back to my favorites. That's the problem, is I don't go back to my favorites. I'll end up searching again, just because my favorites are so large. Why would I search? I search in my Google tab rather than in my favorites, because then I can get updated information. So if I as TechnoGhost, that's how I do it. One window per project. This project is React. That's what this window is. All these tabs in this window are React. And when it's time to go through again, I'll just search for the same React stuff if I need it, and then I'll build another window later. But I'm also always getting access to that updated information that I couldn't get if I just searched my favorites. Wonderfield said, I was watching some talks on functional programming last night. That's great. I encourage it. I encourage functional programming. And for those people who came in early, right before we hop in, I'm going to show off my hair because last time my hair was not in a great way, but now it's looking good. I gotta show it off. Because it's gonna go away soon. As soon as I get my vaccine, get it done, I'm gonna go get a haircut. So let me show it off before it goes away. It goes away for good. It's never coming back if I can. All right, here we go. My wife is whistling from the other room. Oh, yeah. I look like I could be on the cover of like a 90s alt rock band. I could be, or if I shave the beard, it could be Hanson. If I keep the beard, it could be like, I don't know. Like, I'm trying to think. Reptar Bro says, no, I need the Hanson vibes. Those wonderful post-grunge pop bands. Bombaloni says, I actually cleaned up and bookmarked all my open tabs right before finding 100 devs. Now it's even worse. Wonderfield says, there's a neat extension I've started using for grouping and saving tabs. It's called One Tab. I'll have to check that out, Wonderfield. That's cool. Why am I cutting my hair? I gotta cut it off. It's too much. It's too much to maintain. I prefer short hair. Like a lot of my life was with long hair. I still don't have my high school picture with my very long hair, but I'll get it to you eventually. I'll get it. Wonderfield says, I have my quarantine locks going as well. I've elected to cut it myself, possibly this week. Good luck, Wonderfield. I don't feel comfortable cutting my own. If I'm already this bad at web design, which I feel comfortable with, how the hell am I gonna cut my own hair? Like, I understand a lot about web design, and I still cannot make a good-looking website. No way I'm gonna cut my own fucking hair. Kanye says he cut his hair. Yeah. Congratulations. My friend cuts his hair and he's like, it's super easy. All you have to do is watch some tutorials and get used to it. It's like, nope, I gotta go on stream. I'll be wearing a hat for a while if I do that. I'll be wearing a hat. Just know that if you see me on stream, it's because my hair, with a hat, it's because I fucked up my own hair, probably. Mbop. Tony Diamond says, ball gang, can't remember the last time I went to a barber. Yeah, maybe I don't know though. I don't want to be bald. I want to have a little bit of hair. Mr. Overzeal says, I've been cutting my hair all quarantine and it's hella uneven every time. Yeah. That's how I'd be super uneven. I gotta be in front of people. I'm just gonna put it up usually. I'm just gonna put it up. I'm gonna put it up now. I'll put my hair up right now and we'll get back to coding. Rambo Sweet says, I can barely shave my face without cutting it. I would never put clippers near my hair. Alright, Kainu. Have a good one. We'll catch you when you're back from your shower before you head off to work. Have a good one. Alright. Hair is up. Got it up in my clip now. I gotta say, hair clips are one of the greatest inventions ever. Way to go, whoever invented the hair clip. You nailed it. No notes. No notes on the hair clip. Gently holds my hair however I'd like. Hair ties, however, always pull out my hair. Never with a hair clip. Never with a hair clip. This stream is sponsored by hair clips. All right. You get a hair clip. You get a hair clip. All right. So, nobody has posted what they'd like to learn. Let's see real quick. I'm going to look back real quick just to make sure. It's mostly been conversations about tabs. Let's see. Did anyone post what they wanted to work on? Bob Baloney said, I need more practice. Let's see. Techno Ghost, I didn't get you when you came in. Says, I'm just here for more JS in my ears at any level. Sunday was my first time seeing JS. Well, thank you, Techno Ghost, for coming by. I'm sorry I didn't catch you right when you came in. Ryan, thank you for coming in. Thank you for checking out the stream. Yeah, we're going to be working on a little JavaScript today. It'll be great. Ryan says, I now use a hairband clip, and it's only been 10 weeks with no haircut. Yeah, hair grows fast, man. All right. So, anybody, what do you want to work on? Right now, the only one I've gotten is Bombaloni for Recursion. So let's work on some Recursion. If you got something you want to work on, drop it in the chat. Drop it in the chat and we'll talk about it. Right now, let's work on some Recursion. Let's work on some Recursion. Rambo Sweet says log in and sign up with navbar that changes when a user's logged in. Yeah, that sounds interesting. Do you have some code for that, Rambo Sweets? Do you have some code for that, or do you just want some general info about it? Because what you're talking about would be great with React. And Tony Diamond says, I got some API questions in the Poke API. Sure. Ryan says, I got to do the API homework where I've got to get info from one API and use that info to get data from another API. That's a good one. That's a tough one. We actually have some stuff in last stream about that if you want to check out my very last stream before this one. Ryan says, I started 8 weeks after the bootcamp began. Hey, you're right where people are. If you got questions about passing from one API to another, that's the stuff that people are still struggling with. So you're right up there. Way to go. So we can talk about that a little more. I might use Veronica's code and we can talk a little about that. But let's go ahead and let's talk about Recursion a little bit. This is a good place to start. Let's talk about Recursion. So we're going to talk about Recursion, and we're going to at the same time talk about a few other things. We're going to talk about parameters. We're going to talk about returns. We're going to talk about scope. We're going to talk about delegating responsibilities to other functions. So this is going to be really good. Let's check it out. So, we're going to start with a function, and we're going to call it recurse. So we want this function to recurse, right? Actually, let's call it count up. Let's call it count up, because that's an easy one. It's an easy one to call it count up. And we'll say max right here. So what we want to do is create a function. I'll put some pseudocode in here. We'll say create a function that counts from 0 to the max. Parameter. Now, you could easily solve this specific case with iteration. A lot of problems that can be, any iteration problem can be solved with recursion. So this is a good example to bridge the gap between iteration and recursion. Now, there are some things that only recursion can solve, and that'll come later. I guess not only recursion can solve, but it can solve more concisely than if we were to write a whole bunch of iteration with conditionals. It would require a lot of conditionals for an iteration. Gets a little more complicated with our for loops. But recursion can allow us to do some very interesting things. First, we're going to do a counter, and then we'll talk a little bit about what other things we can do. So let's look here. So right here we have one parameter, and we're going to call it, let's actually call it max number, just to make it clear. Call it max num. So we've got a parameter for our function. For those of you who are less familiar with JavaScript, a parameter is a placeholder for a value. When we call our function later, this is only the definition. It's not going to do anything until we call it. When we call our function later, we will give that function an argument. And that argument will go everywhere in our function that we place this max num parameter. It's like a placeholder, like a Mad Lib almost. If you remember Mad Libs, they say, you know, you have a bunch of blank spaces in your code. You have a bunch of blank spaces in your code and they ask you for specific things like, oh, put a verb here or put a noun here. Imagine max number is like a Mad Lib where you're gonna write a little story here. Your function is a story, and wherever you put max number, you're asking your program to fill in that Mad Lib. Say, hey, give me a max number. I want to use it in my Mad Lib so we can get a different result every time. We're going to go through the same process, but we'll get slightly different changes based on user input, like a Mad Lib. That's the best way I've found to describe function parameters. Hopefully that's very helpful to people to think of it in that way, especially if you're very new to JavaScript. So let me go ahead and I'll console log it. Planes are flying overhead. I live right near an Air Force base. Now we can see inside this function, I'm going to console log max number, and we're going to see what comes up. Now how we call a function is we type out the function's name. So the function defined name is count up. And then to make that function call, we place parentheses at the end. So now this is a function call. When a function has parameters, what we do is we normally feed in an argument here, is what that's called. It's the noun that we're feeding into our Mad Lib. In this case, it's a max number that we're feeding into a Mad Lib. Oh, Bombaloni says this is a nice analogy. Thank you so much. TechnoGhost says this is great. Thanks for the Yankee definitions. You're very welcome, TechnoGhost. I think this is I think that's the best way I've found to describe it, where people who are struggling with parameters are like, oh, that makes sense, like a Mad Lib, because everyone's done Mad Libs. So let me go ahead and open my console here. Let me go ahead and blow this up too. I'm starting to realize that my code's probably a little small for people, especially for what we're writing. If anybody ever has any trouble reading what I'm typing, please let me know as quick as possible. I will absolutely make sure you can see what I'm typing. Maybe just a little smaller right there. My whole goal is to make sure that everybody understands what's going on. So let's go ahead and run this and see what happens. We're not feeding in an argument. You see, we have an empty Mad Lib. But Bombaloni says the size is perfect for me now. Great. I'm so happy. Excellent. So we've got a Mad Lib here, and it says, okay, we've said, hey, hold a space for a value. But we haven't fed anything in. So let's go ahead and check to see what happens. node, and we're going to say recursion.js. And we get undefined. That's our console log. Our console log says undefined. Let's go ahead and see what it's like when we actually change this into a Mad Lib. Your max number is, and we're gonna interpolate this. We're gonna use something called template literals. Template literals are a way to create a string, but with a variable in it. So what we're really, now this is really Mad Libs territory, where we're like, hey, I've got a string here that's telling part of a story, and this is the Mad Lib right here. This is the one that can change and be anything. So this is like straight up Mad Libs now. And then we'll go ahead and run it again. Your max number is undefined. Your max number is undefined. Bombaloni loves template literals. I'm glad. Template literals are pretty sweet. Template literals can be used in some very interesting ways, like force a type conversion on a number to a string without using toString. Very cool. Back in the day, to force that quick type conversion, people would do an empty string plus a number, and they'd force that. That's how they'd coerce it. But now we've got template literals. Hamster 1911 says literals are literally lit. Bombaloni says, I did not know that. Thanks. Yeah, no problem, Bombaloni. Hey, Hamster, thank you so much for coming by chat again. Really appreciate it. You were so knowledgeable last time. It means so much that you would come back and share some of that knowledge again. Thank you very much. So now, we're going to feed in a value to this count up. We're going to give this function call an argument. And you know, I know we said we were okay with parameters, but I love going over this stuff. Just a refresher on the fundamentals, because this is where I see people struggling the most. So let's go ahead and feed in a value, and we're going to check it out. Let's see what happens when we run it now. We're giving it 9, and we're saying, hey, I know you're asking for a max number for your Mad Lib. Let's give you a number, because that's what you want, right? You want a number. So let's give our Mad Lib a number. Your max number is 9. Our Mad Lib is working. Our Mad Lib is working. Excellent. This, however, is not a pure function. And this is something that Leon wasn't really explaining in his class too much. I think people have a problem with declarative code. Declarative code with pure functions. Right here, what we're doing is called imperative code or procedural code, where we're taking a function and telling it some steps to do very directly. It could end up being quite a few steps, and it's very specialized instead of being very modular, where we can reuse it in different ways. This will always console log that value. What if we wanted to do something else with that value? What if we wanted to get this string out and do something else with it instead of console logging? That's a problem. We've created a problem for ourselves by doing this. Now, this will do nothing but console log. It's the only thing it does with that string. But we can do something a little different. Oh, Hamster 1911 says, well, thank you for taking the time to explain JavaScript to people. I'm so glad to. I'm so happy to. You know what I just realized, Hamster, is that this is a job called Dev Relations. It's called Developer Relations, apparently. Is that what this is, Hamster? I know you're a an employed dev, and you have a lot of knowledge. Like, do you think that this would be considered like dev relations? Maybe that's what I should be going for. I just sent Leon a message today like, hey, what's dev relations? Is it like what I'm doing with Twitch, being like a front-facing person who's explaining difficult concepts to people? I'm waiting for a response. I just sent that this morning, so I didn't expect a response immediately anyway. But it sure sounds like what I'm doing from what I've seen. So let's see. So let's go ahead and let's not force this to console log inside the function. Let's return our Mad Libs and then decide what to do with it. So we can return this. So what functions can do when we... This is what some people have trouble with when learning about functions, is thinking about functions in an almost mathematical way, is that they take an input and give an output. This is how we write what's called a pure function. A pure function takes an input and gives an output. And then you can do something else with that output, and you can decide what to do with it. It allows us to choose to do things in different ways instead of being bound to that console log decision we made early. Right? Wouldn't that be interesting if we could do many things with it? Hamster says, depends on the company. Haha. Being a public figure for JS is often more than a job though, so it's hard to put in a term. Interesting. Interesting. Being a public figure for JavaScript is often more than a job though, so it's hard to put in a term. Interesting. I'm gonna have to talk to some companies. I'm gonna have to talk to some dev relations people and be like, I think this is a fit for me. What do you think? I think that'd be really helpful. All right. So now let's go ahead and console log our return. So what happens when we return from a function is we've got a function call right here. We give it a value and it returns that value. Now what I mean by it returns that value is wherever you see a function call, JavaScript sees this function call, and JavaScript treats it like a Mad Lib on its own. It says, hey, this function call is taking up space. This function call is taking up space. But a function call isn't really a... I don't know what this function call means specifically. I don't know what this function call means. So what I have to do is I have to run through the function. So what JavaScript does when it sees line 6 where we call our function is it hops back up to line 2 and it reads the function. It says, you're referencing a function. I see. You have a name and then you have 2 parentheses. That means you're referencing a function, which means you typed out some information earlier that I need to go look up. And so it does. It goes and looks up this information on line 2. And it says, all right, so we've got count up. All right, I found it. I found count up. It's a function. I found the name. We've got a parameter. Do we have an argument for that parameter? And it looks back at our function call and says, yes, we do have an argument to go into that parameter. And then it goes through your code. We could have other things happening here. We will have other things happening here. Other stuff happens, maybe? Other stuff could happen there. Who knows? And then at the end, we get a return value. Now, you may be thinking, what happens with that return? Where does JavaScript put that return? Huh? Where does JavaScript put that return? Where does it go? Does it just go off into JavaScript and do something there? No, it doesn't. It's very interesting what happens. Because our function has an output, that's what that return is. What happens is this value right here, count up parentheses 9, is equal to the function return. It is 100% equal to the function return. I can show you that in a couple ways. That this right here, count up parentheses 9, is exactly the same as your max number is 9. Exactly the same. Let's console log it real quick. I'm going to clear out my console. Oh, jeez. So, I console logged my function call, and it said your max number is 9. That makes me think that count up parentheses 9 is your max number is 9. If that's what we're console logging it seems to say your max number is 9. Like, that's what I am. We console logged it. Let's go ahead and check the type of it. Because this is a function call, right? What would you expect the type of to be? Oh, I typed type of wrong. Should be O? Should be a big O? Type of. No? I guess it's just type of. Let's go ahead and do it real quick. Let's see if we get it right. Daddy Anki, thanks for coming by. What's up? How you doing? Hamster says, keep in mind though that JavaScript optimizes code out that does nothing. So it is only the return value when you actually use it. Hamster said, this can be helpful knowledge if you ever do a benchmark and get super fast results. Interesting, interesting. Rambo Sweets says, why is it a string? That's a great question, Rambo Sweets. Why is it a string? That's because this function call is its return. It is its return. And its return is a string. Carcer says if you do type of count up without calling the function, it will be a function. That is exactly true. That is exactly true, Carcer. Let's go ahead and test that. It says function right there because we did not feed it an argument. When we feed it an argument and call a function, that function gives a return, and it is that return. It is its return when you call it. So, that's why when we do this right here, it's coming back as string, because when you call a function, that function call is replaced by its return in JavaScript. Daddy Yankee says, I'm doing good, just finished a little project. What's on the docket today? Right now we're talking about recursion a little bit. We're going to do a quick conversion of an iteration to a recursion. And then we're going to talk a little bit about other instances where recursion can do very cool things. So let's check it out. So we've just talked about how a function call is almost consumed and replaced by its return. A function call is its return. So now that we know that, we can do some very interesting things. We can even call this in another function. We could call this in another function instead of just console logging it. We could say function make story function make story, and then we could take a value. And we can actually do val1, val2, val2, and of course I'm not being super dry with this. I just want to explain how these things are working. We can make it even more dry later. Bombaloni says, smacking my forehead. Of course that's how backticks convert type. LOL. It helps to see things so spelled out sometimes. Thank you. You're very welcome, Bombaloni. That's why I'm doing it. That's why I'm doing it from the beginning. I want to do it from the beginning so we're all on the same page. Parameters, returns, it may feel like you've got them all, template literals, but sometimes they interact in ways you don't see. Sometimes there's stuff going on behind the scenes that you don't have the full information of. I'm so glad that seeing it spelled out like this made a difference. You're so welcome. Izzy says, what's up, Izzy? Thank you, faithful mod, being here for me. Really appreciate it. How you doing today, Izzy? We're just working on a little parameters, returns, and then we're going to move into recursion. So we can go ahead and do something like this. So we can call this twice in here. We're going to make a story, okay? We're going to make a story, and that story is going to be on an object. So make story object. And we're going to say, and imagine this is sentences instead of just your max number is max num. Let's say we were putting in dynamic sentences, and we could say sentence 1, and then we could do sentence 2. And so we're making an object. We're making an object literal here. What we're doing is we're creating a function that calls another function and returns a value. This is how we get very modular code that can weave through one another to create very complicated programs without overly typing a lot. And this is how we also leverage returns. We leverage returns so that we can create code that passes values. It makes it very easy for us to create complicated programs with modular bits of code. Izzy said, I'm just chilling, had a coffee chat. That is great, Izzy. Jeff, how's it going, Jeff? Jeff and I had a wonderful chat this weekend. That was so great, Jeff. Really appreciate it. Jeff was explaining some React to me. Jeff, you'll be happy to know that I moved on to class components, and then after class components, I am going to strike out on learning hooks. And after hooks, I think I'll feel more comfortable. You know, I haven't gotten to the use state yet, the use state hook, but I'll be there soon. I'll be there. We're gonna get there. Right now we're talking about function returns and how important returns are to writing pure code, pure functions, functional programming, making sure we don't have any side effects. Let's go ahead and see what happens when we call make story object now. Let's console log it. Console.log, and we'll do make story object, and we'll pass in 1 and 9 for our parameters. Because you see, we've got parameters here. This is just Mad Libs. This is just an extension of our Mad Libs from before. We can combine as many Mad Libs as we want and pass the values to each other. And this allows us to keep things a very small amount of code, a maintainable modular amount of code where things only do one thing. The thing we do here is we create a string. The thing we do here is we create an object. Breaking them up like this lets us do those things individually. Now, I can do both count up individually and make story object using count up. And I can console log them, or I can use count up in my other function. Let's go ahead and log it and see what happens. So now, because I didn't hard code count up to post to the console, I didn't hard code it to log to the console, I coded it to return its value, we can do even more with it. We can use it to make to put those values in objects, and we can still log it if we want. Jeff says, thanks for listening to me babble about React and coming up with bad examples. That's my life, man. I babble about code and come up with bad examples all the time. I don't know. This isn't a great example. I don't know how good this example is. I have no fucking idea. I'm just trying. Just out here trying. I'd say probably half of my examples are good. And you definitely weren't babbling about React. I sure learned a lot. I learned a lot from you in that you gave me a really quick crash course in React, and it was really cool to see what you can do with Next.js. I really appreciate that conversation, Jeff. I can't tell you enough how much I appreciated that conversation. That was a great way to start my day. I ended up not recording that podcast that day that I had to leave to go record. Our guest got in a fender bender and was late and wasn't available for it, so I ended up leaving that chat early when I should have been learning more from you. Tony Diamond says, so those values would most likely be something like user input? They could come from anywhere, Tony. They could come from anywhere. They could just come from your instance of your programming. You could like save this count up function in a different file and then just call it. You can import it and call it whenever you need it, and it can be user input, or it could be user input, or it could be your input for just this specific program. You can move it between programs, that count up function, however we choose to use it. It could come from a database, which isn't user input, but it does come from a different source than your own program. It could be tons of things. It could come from an API. It could come from anywhere. Your mind is the limit where you get those values from. So now we've managed to do even more with this code by not forcing ourselves to console log it. We said with a return, we can do more with this code. So that's the importance of function returns. Is anybody having trouble understanding the importance of function returns? This is kind of like object-oriented programming because this is a programming paradigm called functional programming, where you try to have pure functions that only do one thing, that take an input and give an output, that allow for modularity. It has rules kind of like object-oriented programming that give you certain benefits. And for a lot of people, they seem to be convoluted at first. They seem to be convoluted. And so if you're feeling like this is a little bit convoluted, like why would we go this extra step and do this extra stuff, even with the examples, I totally understand. But at this point, we have to accept that we're standing on the shoulders of giants. And they seem to make these decisions for good reasons. And we should probably follow those decisions. One way or another. If we choose to follow one paradigm or another, we got to think about, we got to accept we are learners. And these people came up with these paradigms for a reason. They must have a good reason. I know that's not a great reason, but as a learner, we might as well. Until we know enough that we can critique those paradigms, right? Until we know enough that we can critique it. We just kind of have to be like, yeah, you're right. I guess you're right. I should probably do it this way, huh? I don't understand, but you know more than me, so. That's how I feel a lot of the time. And then when you get more comfortable with it, you can start asking more whys. It's just how it worked for me. So is anybody having trouble on understanding why we return functions instead of hard coding non-returned results in? If we can return a result, we'd rather do that than hard code at destination. Does that make sense? It allows for modularity. It allows us to do different things with it. Because we could do something like this even. We can put it in the DOM. Let's imagine we have a space in our DOM. DOM.getElement by ID, and we have string target is the ID. We can say .inner HTML equals count up 7. We can do a count up there, and the inner HTML will change to your max number is 7 instead of going to the console. We've used this in 3 different ways now. We've used it to help in creating an object, we've used it to post to the DOM, and we have console logged in. That's the joy of modularity. That's the joy of a function return. Bombaloni says that makes sense. I'm going to take it that it makes sense for everyone. If it doesn't make sense, make sure you shout it out to me. Make sure you tell me. I'll find a way. I will find a way to make it make sense for you if you don't understand it. That's what I'm here for. So, since I'm getting the thumbs up on understanding, let's go ahead and move toward recursion now. So now, we're going to take all this stuff away. We're going to take the string away. We're going to take all this stuff and we're going to end with an empty function again. Excuse me. We're going to end with an empty function again. Let's go ahead and start making our count up. So if we were to iterate with this, we could create a for loop. But Bombaloni said that's where my brain starts melting. Carcer says recursion tic-tac-toe next. Yeah, of course, Carcer. You can do it. You can totally do it if you wanted to. Let's explore. No, I'm just kidding. So we're going to count from 0 to our max number, right? We can always do I is less than or equal to max number. And then we do I plus I plus plus. And for those of you who are unfamiliar with for loops, I don't really have time to get into loops right now, but this is an iterating loop, which means it will start at the value we tell us, which right here is 0, and it will run until that number, that variable I, is equal to max number. After that, it won't run anymore. And what I've done right here is said that we are going to add 1 value to that every time this loop runs. Hamster1911 says, by the way, recursion versus iteration is a common interview question. Great. We're doing some good interview questions today. Excellent. Zader redeemed a hydrate. Thank you so much. I'm going to accept that happily. I am so thirsty. Thank you, Zader. It means a lot to me. Keeping me healthy, keeping me hydrated. Big props. Thank you. All right. So now we're going to iterate on this one. So, what we would do to count up from 1 is we could do another console log here. But if we wanted to return this value so it could be used, we would say, we would create a variable here, and that variable would be, let, and I guess we would do an array. I mean, I guess we could console log it. We could just console log it from in here. But I would say let, and then I would say num array equals bloop. And then we're going to go ahead and we're going to push it in. Dot push. And we're going to go ahead and push I. And then we will return num array. Bombaloni says, cool, thanks, Ham. And then in the next line, stir. That was called an early return right there. Joke for everybody. Programming joke, early return. Oh, oh. All right. Anyway, sorry about that. So, and then we can do a console log. If they're like, hey, console log the numbers 1 to a max number, and you do it this way, where you return an array and then spread that array. They're gonna fucking lose their minds. They're gonna be like, oh shit, this person is really good at functional programming for being a junior dev. To know to do that instead of console log I directly, they're gonna be like, oh my god, this person understands. You know, so this is probably the best way to handle this for an interview question for iteration. Bull says spread operator is butter. Yeah, Zader, spread. So what spread does? Let's go ahead and log this first, okay? Let's go ahead and I'll log different examples. So we're gonna log it without the spread operator, okay? So let's do that first. I'm gonna clear my console. Tony Diamond has the same question. Why the ... Okay, let's talk about it. Good question, everybody. Thank you so much for asking this question. I want to fix those blind spots. Thank you so much for asking this question. Bombaloni says, I started learning spread by accident looking stuff up for Code Wars. Yeah. And Bull says the same. Yep, Code Wars made me look up about spread operators. Good. Let's go ahead and run this. So, you can see in my return, what I'm console logging is 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So it's working, but all of those values are in an array. All of those values are in an array. Chat, how do I get all of those values to console log one at a time instead, without the spread operator? For those people who do understand the spread operator, how would I log each of those values individually instead of with that spread operator? Dean Bull says for each. That's a good option. For each is a good option. Sure, let's go ahead and do for each. That's a great option. So instead of console logging the whole array, we can console log one at a time. We know that count up. Carcer says another loop. Yes. Another, yeah, Zader says another 4. Tony says split, but split, Tony will still give us an array. It's still each value in the array, so split won't work in this instance. That's for turning a string into an array. But we want to get each individual value. And like Carcer said, another loop. Hamster says, while loop with pop. Yeah, totally good. Absolutely. Hamster says, while loop with pop. Sure. I guess in this case it would be unshift because we want to code. We want to do. It would be shift because we want to do it counting from 0 up. So we would have to do shift in this one, I think. But yeah, totally. We could do it lots of ways. So let's do it. Let's just do it for each real quick. I have become less of a fan of for each lately, but let's still do it anyway. And we'll do console log for our callback function. And let's see what happens here when we do it. We're gonna go ahead and clear. Oh geez. I sure console logged in a weird way. Console log the array every time. So let's go ahead and do num, and we'll just do our arrow function, and then we'll do console log num. See if that changes it. Yes, that is exactly what we wanted. I'm actually not sure why that callback didn't work the way I wanted. That's okay. But this is exactly what we wanted. It counted from 0 to 10. We console logged each individual number. We did it with a function, an arrow function right here that takes each number in the array and then console logged that number. Remember, a function call is its return. I'm going to say it again. This is the biggest thing. Drill this into your head. Anki card. Anki card this. A function call is its return. A function call is its return. Get that in those Anki cards. That's a big one. That's a very big one. So, because CountUp returns a number array, it returns an array, we can just put the CountUp call right here. CountUp is an array. This CountUp call is an array because that's what the function returns, is an array. And so we can call for each directly on it, and then we give a function to for each, a callback function, and we've used an arrow function here where num is representative of each number in the array, and then we've console logged that number. So that's a good explanation of how we manage to console log each of those. So now we could do this. Let's see how we do it with spread. So we console log spread count up 10. Let's see what happens when we spread our count up 10. And we're going to go ahead and clear. Now we've got them in a straight line, no array, all individual values. Mwah! Beautiful. Beautiful. What the spread operator does is it takes an array or an array-like structure, and what it does is it takes the brackets off of that structure. It pulls all the values out of that structure, but keeps them as individual values. Zader says, what other applications can we use this for? That's a good question, Zader. One of my favorite applications for this is to pull information from the DOM, like an HTML collection, which is not an array, which does not have array methods on it. And what we can do with that is spread that HTML collection, which spread does work on it because it works on array-like objects like an HTML collection. And we can spread those values directly into a new array. I can show you real quick. We're getting a little off track for what was supposed to be about recursion, but let's go ahead and talk about it real quick. This is good stuff. This is good stuff. So this is not a great project for me to look in about this because this is a React project. Yeah, this is not a great one for this. Let's go over to a different web page. Let's go to a different web page. Here we go. Actually, yeah, this is fine. We'll just go to my treehouse video. We'll go to my treehouse video and I'll show you how it works, all right? Actually, we can just stay on scoreboard. Let's just stay on scoreboard. I can insert some stuff into the DOM real quick. So let's talk, let me insert some stuff into the DOM and we'll talk about it. I'll say document.get, I don't know, let's just say query selector. Nope. Query selector, and I'll say body, and I'll do insert adjacent HTML, and we'll do before end, and I'll throw in a string containing some elements. And I'll just do div, and we'll do ID equals 1, and I'll end that div. We'll do div ID equals 2, and we'll end that div, and I'll do a final one. div id equals 3. And we'll end that div. So I'm just throwing some extra HTML elements into the DOM. Let me make sure I'm done. Okay. All right. So now let's go ahead and get body.children. Ooh, whoops. That's right. I didn't save this as a variable. We'll say body.children. And you can see when we get body.children, whenever you're going in and collecting some values from the DOM, Carcer says one main use case is console logging array values, like we just did, which is good. It's good that we taught that, console logging array values. That's excellent. I'm glad that that is a common use case. But this is one that I enjoy, especially with manipulating the DOM, is that we have an HTML collection here. So this is every child of the body script. And you can see we've got my new div1, div2, div3 there. We've got all of these values that are represented by child elements of the body, but they're an HTML collection. Let's save it. Let's do const children equals body.children. So we've saved it there. Let's make sure we got children. It's an HTML collection. Perfect. So let's try to do an array method on children. Let's try to do children dot for each, and we'll say for each of them, we'll just do the same thing. We'll say child console.log child. Right? We saw that that worked for arrays. Look at that. It doesn't work. It doesn't work because an HTML collection is not an array, even though it looks exactly like an array. It comes in square brackets. It's comma separated values in a very specific order. It's an ordered list of values. And yet, array methods don't work on it because it's not an array. Now, one thing you could do is you could do something like this. Array.from, and you could do children, and then you get an array. This specifically says it's an array. It's got the prototype array on it. HTML children has the prototype HTML collection. But by doing array.from, we got an array out of it. You can always do that. You can use the array constructor and make an array out of it. Sure. Or you could do this using the spread operator. You can do ... children. Crossstage says, could you also do ... children? Dang, I'm a psychic. Thanks for joining, baby. I really appreciate it. And good job. Absolutely. Good job calling that ... children. What we've done is changed it into an array because the spread operator works on array-like objects. So what we could do is this. We could do ... for... I'm sorry, ... children, because we know that gets us an array, right? ... children, and then we can do for each, and then we can do num, we can do, we can do child, and then we can do console.log child. Look at that. And we've logged each of them individually. It gave us access to array methods. It quickly gave us access to array methods when we needed them. It very quickly gave us access to array methods on something that was not an array. That's one of the very cool ways that I have found to use the spread operator. And like Carcer said, a main one is console logging array values, which we did cover. CrossH says, so when you convert an array, is it considered a node list or just an array? It's just an array now. We can go ahead and look at the prototype real quick. We got prototype array. This is when we spread it. We just spread it. We have the array prototype. I don't see any other prototypes on here, just array. And then we can scroll down, and then we have proto object. That's all we got. So it is no longer an HTML collection after we convert it to an array. Child still exists. Or children. The variable children still exists, and it is still a HTML collection. It's still an HTML collection. It didn't change the original. It allowed us to change it just for our specific use, so we could use array methods on it. Jeff says, I think it would be considered an array of nodes. I think an HTML collection is even more specific, where it's an array of elements. And elements are nodes. Elements are a type of node. Absolutely, Jeff. It is an array of nodes. Absolutely. And you can still, when we scroll over, we can still see the values. Like, this is still the root. You know? These are still the values in here. We still have access to these values. These still are representative of elements in the DOM, even though they came from an array. This is the array itself. It's still reacting to the DOM. Pretty neat, right? Oh, Bombaloni says this is neat. Yeah, it is neat. It is neat. So that's the spread operator. The spread lets you turn an array or an array-like object into a list of its individual values. But it's no longer in a data structure. So it's just its individual values out in the ether, whatever you want to do with them. It's a comma-separated group of values, but not within a data structure. It can be passed into a function that takes multiple arguments. Let's do that real quick. Let's do that real quick. Let's say function multiple, can't spell multiple args. And then we'll say arg1, or I guess that's parameter 2. Param1, param2. We'll do it real quick. This is just a sidetrack, just a little bit. And we'll say return, we'll make a string here, and I'll say param1 is param1 copy. And I'm doing this as a string just so we can see that, I mean, we could turn this into anything. We could turn it into an object, which this is looking like an object, but I want to make it a string just so you can see. We're more comfortable working with strings and understanding what strings do. So I'm going to save that, and then I'm going to do, let me take this spread operator away. We don't need that right now. And let's say we have const array, and I'll say that array has 1 and 2 in it, right? So we have an array. Now, how would you call this function? We're going to do console.log. We're going to do console.log, multiple args. How would you call this function? How would you feed 1 into parameter 1 and 2 into parameter 2? How would you do that, chat? I'm interested in seeing what chat has to say. So you would put R in, Bombaloni. Let's go ahead and test that out. Let's go ahead and put R in. Let's test it with R first. I see you changed it, but let's test it with R first. So we tested it with R first, and we got param12, param2 undefined. The reason that param2 is undefined is because an array is one argument. An array is one thing. It is one data structure. Carsera says, why does multiple args not take an array as an argument? Carsera, that's because we are not always feeding an argument to multiple args. Perhaps we're getting a non-array value as an argument. Who knows? Thank you for following Ayasushi. Or is it Ayashushi? I'm not sure. Hey Aya, thank you for following. Means a lot to me. Let me know how to pronounce your name. I love pronouncing people's names correctly. But Carsera says, why does multiple args not take an array as an argument? Ayasushi. Ah, very cool. Yes, it's hypothetical, Carsera. Totally hypothetical. This is a function that someone else wrote, and we have to now conform to it. That's a good reason, is that we didn't write this, someone else did this. So Izzy says, how about R0, R1? Let's do that. R0, and then R1. Oh, sorry, whoops, R1. So let's see how that works. Let's go ahead and clear this. Well, we don't have to clear it. We can just do it again. We'll see what we got. We got some comparisons. All right. So Izzy's selection worked with R0 and R1. And then Zader says it worked if we do the spread. Zader's ahead of us. Let's go ahead and try that spread operator. We're going to do ... R. And what R does is it knocks the brackets off. It knocks the brackets off, so therefore we have 1, 2, which is the right number of parameters here. It's the right number of parameters that we need. Let's go ahead and save this, and let's see what happens. Very cool. That is a very cool thing we can do with a spread operator. Zader says, I can really see the practical application of this now. Thanks for this. You are so welcome, Zader. I love that this explanation helped you with the spread operator. And we got here from talking about recursion. We got here starting out with the intention to talk about recursion, but we had a really good lesson on the spread operator. Is this making sense to everyone? Are we getting that it's just knocking off the brackets and like releasing the values inside? Bombaloni said, this is great. I hadn't thought of that before. Only just starting to use the spread operator. And Bombaloni says, yeah, this is helpful. I'm so glad. I'm so glad. That means so much to me. I am so very happy. You know, sometimes I struggle. Sometimes I struggle with the things like the time commitment of this stream. Sometimes it's hard to organize my life, and I think to myself, you know, I hope I'm doing something of value and not like spinning my wheels doing this stream, but I'm so glad that I'm putting some value into the world. You know, the fact that you are telling me this is good, that makes me feel so good. That makes me feel so good. So thank you all. Thank you for coming to the stream. I know we still have like an hour and 45 minutes left, but I am so thankful. I know that's how I usually end the stream, is I'm so thankful to all of you, but it really, I feel it right now. I feel it right now. I'm so glad. I'm so glad it makes more sense. Zader says, this is valuable. Keep it up. We need more people like you and Leon. I don't even feel comfortable with you comparing me to Leon. Like, Leon has done so much more than me. I am so appreciative that you would think to compare me in a positive way to Leon. It means a lot to me. I'm getting a little choked up. Oh my gosh. Mr. Overzealous says, I appreciate it as well. I ran into HTML collections yesterday and this could have been useful. Hey, I am so glad. Yeah, that's one of the I loved using that on HTML collections. I love sharing that little tip. It's because HTML collections, when you first get into them, you're like, oh shit, none of my array methods work on this thing that looks exactly like a fucking array, right? CrossH says he also has like 9 years of experience on you. You'll get there before you know it. Yeah, he does have a lot of experience on me. Hopefully I'll be there. Hopefully I can get to that point. Bombaloni says, yes, this morning you are building on what I do understand and giving more, as well as reinforcing some things. Oh, that's so great. Thank you, Bombaloni. Thank you so much. And Aya Sushi says, I'm new. Thank you for doing this. A big help to a newbie like me. Carcer says, what tool, if any, do you use to schedule or plan your time? Google Calendars, and it's hard to keep up with, and I don't do that great of a job, Carcer. If you got any tips, let me know to plan, schedule my time. I've never been that great of a planner. Context switching is tough for me. I think it's tough for everybody. But I haven't found the right method to get back into it. Carcer says, no, man, I'm dying over here too. Okay. Oh shit. Oh, that really got me. That was really funny. I was like, oh, finally, someone's gonna know. I've asked tons of people, how do I organize? And they're all like, I don't know. Nope, it's just all of us. Oh shit, that's so funny to me. Alright, Izzy says, super helpful lessons every time, plus I can make you smoke, so that's a bonus. That's true. Hamster says, just got back. Are you talking about HTML collections? Yes, Hamster. We talked about how spread can be used to rapidly change a HTML collection into an array so we can use array methods on it. Jeff says to Izzy, well said, I'm saving up to make dab dab. Well, I got it here somewhere today. Oh no, I left it in the other room. I'm charging it. I've got the flowers in front of me. I can always run and go get the dab if someone redeems it. Reptar Bro says, yo, those 9 years of experience. You want to give a homie some of those years of experience? We were talking about Leon, Tiff. We were talking about Leon having 9 years of experience on me. Because someone compared me to Leon, I was like, fuck, I don't know. Don't do that. I don't know that shit. Izzy says, save that for a very hard topic. Izzy, why you do this to me? Encouraging people to bust me up during hard lessons? God! Those are my mods for you. Shit. Oh, man. Alright. So, let's get back into recursion. Izzy says can't help it. Yeah, it's fine. No, that's why you're my mod. Wonderfield says, I'll be at 2 dabs worth here in no time. Ah, yeah, Wonderfield, you're here all the time. I appreciate it. I appreciate your support, Wonderfield. I'm glad I could do some stuff for you. I'm glad you think that this is valuable. So let's get back to this recursion. Jeff said, I'll wait until we get into some more inheritance. Great. Great. Excellent. Tony Diamond said, I just grabbed a FlowerMate 5.0 Mini. Awesome. I got the FlowerMate 5.0 Pro. If you ever need some help working out the kinks with it, I had some real trouble early on. I usually use pretty dry flour. We had a bunch of pretty dry flour that was given to us quite a while ago. It's still really good. Still works really well. But I had some trouble working out the kinks with it, especially if you're putting flour directly into the chamber, into the heating chamber, instead of into their little pod. I didn't like their pod, so I put the flour directly into the heating chamber, and I was drawing in, and it was clogging up my filter every time just because I was drawing too hard. Oh, you work at a smoke shop. Never mind. You already know. You already know. Tony says, yeah, that pot is hot garbage. Yeah. Bombaloni says, okay, I have to ask, what's the difference between flour and a dab? Let me go get my cartridge real quick. All right, so we're back. Now we're getting a lesson. Getting a weed lesson real quick. This is our brain break. We're gonna take a quick 5-minute weed lesson so people can. This is tough because there's not a lot of really good information out there. People are really scared to ask questions about cannabis. People are really scared to ask questions about programming. People are really scared to ask questions where they feel they might be. They're afraid people will think they're stupid for asking questions. And I'm really thankful to Bombaloni and everyone out there who's willing to ask questions about stuff they don't understand. What an amazing talent to be able to ask questions about things you don't understand and not feel shame about it. So let's talk. Let's talk about this very tough concept of marijuana. Cross H says, Debalical, demystifying all the intimidating stuff. I love this guy. Well, luckily I love you too, so I need a kiss. All right. Strike CY says, hello everyone. Debalical, are you using Code Runner extension for the terminal? No, I am not using any kind of extension for the terminal. Tony Diamond says, shit, let me know too. I'm pretty knowledgeable on the subject, coding not so much. Hey, you're not unknowledgeable on coding. Think about how far you've come. I hope from that last review session everyone can see how far we come. So, let me explain Bombaloni. So flour is, I didn't grab any flour. I grabbed the other thing, but not the flour. I only have my flour made. So, let's go ahead and I'm going to pull out some flour. So this is flour. So this is the actual flower. It's a bud of the plant. Reptar, you've seen nothing yet. That bag used to be full, and I used to have like 4 bags. So this is a flower, and what it is the budding portion of a plant. It's the budding portion of a cannabis plant. I'll hold it up even closer. It's the budding portion of a cannabis plant, and what it does is it contains a bunch of things called trichomes, which have THC, trichromes, that have THC in them. And THC is the psychoactive chemical that exists in cannabis. And we can take that flower, and after curing it, we can then consume it in some way. And you can see people saying you can eat it, you can, you can do a lot of things with cured cannabis. Izzy said, I remember when you took a dab and taught us to make a keylogger. I do remember that. I do remember taking a dab and teaching you to make a keylogger. Don't make keyloggers. Don't put keyloggers on your sites. Don't do that. All right. So, yeah, it's not the main point of the podcast. I'm just demystifying some questions. I'm not going to get in trouble about this. This is just demystifying some questions. It's not the main point of the stream. Tony Diamond says, before you can eat it, it needs to be decarboxylated. That's exactly correct. Usually, you decarboxylate it, mix it in with some oil, which is good for moving that THC from the plant into a medium that can be ingested. So, what you do with that bud is it has to be cured, and then after it's cured, we can consume it in many different ways. Now, dabs, on the other hand, use cannabis extract oil. And you can get that oil in many different ways. There's a few different chemical processes that you can either use straight chemicals to get those trichromes and the THC off the plant. You can use butane to get it out. Super cold butane will draw it out. You can use heat and pressure which is probably the better way to do it, is with heat and pressure. Solventless is my fave, says Tony. Exactly. Solventless is heat and pressure. Heat plus pressure gets the oil out. Which is rosin, yes. And so that is, you can use those oils to dab. And what dabbing is heating something up to a certain point and then placing the oil on it so that it vaporizes. Now, the most common way of ingesting that nowadays in legal states is what's called a cartridge. And in this cartridge, there is cannabis oil. And I can press a button on my battery to heat that cannabis oil into a vapor, and I can ingest it. And the great thing about vapor, as opposed to combustion, which is how a lot of people smoke, if you've ever seen someone smoke a joint or a bong, combustion is smoke, and it has a lot of smoke in it. And as you know, if you breathe in smoke, those are chemicals that go into your lungs. Those are bad chemicals. Those are benzoates that go into your lungs, and it's not good for you. Vaporizing, however, does not have benzoates, and the medical community is still out on vaporized stuff, but it's definitely healthier than lighting it on fire and getting extra benzoates in your body. So I've got both of these things which vaporize rather than combust. Both of their things. I've got something to vaporize oil, and I've got something to vaporize flour. So let's see. I want to go through chat real quick. I know this was way off topic. Let's see. Bombaloni says, this makes sense, thanks. I understood from context that it was stronger, but didn't know what it was. I'm one of those who thought it was a dance move. How does this compare to vaping, or is it vaping? Good. Okay. I'm answering these questions. Wonderfield says, this is engineering. Bombaloni says, interesting. Hey, Indifferent Ghost. We took a small break from talking about recursion, which we didn't even get to yet because we talked about functions. But I was explaining a little bit about cannabis because we had some questions about cannabis. So that was our little brain break. We took like a 10-minute brain break. We still explained cannabis. Let me close up my little bit of stash here I've got. This is only a small portion of what I've got just right there. Oh yeah, that's all right. Bombaloni says, my fault. Not your fault. No fault. We took a brain break. We needed a brain break. We've been going at this for almost 2 hours. That was a nice brain break. It's a nice brain break. We talked a little bit about something that was off topic. And now we'll get back into recursion. Tony Diamond says there may be issues with the ceramic chamber that might happen, but we don't know. Yeah, that's right. So the other option you can do for dabbing is you don't need to do a cartridge. You can do a a few different things. You can have a bucket on your bong that filters it through water. Tony Diamond says try and use quartz whenever possible. Yes, here I have what's called a honey straw. And what you do is you heat the end of a honey straw like this with a big ass torch. You heat it with a big ass torch and it gets hot, and then you run it across the oil. I obviously have to clean mine off. I haven't cleaned it in a while because I've been using cartridges. But probably the best way to do it is to use quartz, like Tony said, and probably use a bong as a filter too. But honey straws are really cool too. So there's a lot of cool things. A lot of interesting things you can learn there. If anyone has questions about using cannabis, you can always message me directly. I love talking about it. It would be great if I could be like a DevRel or a Devocado from from Leafly. If I was like a dev relations or a dev advocate at Leafly, that'd be fucking cool. That's what I want. Put me in front of people and we'll talk about dev and we'll talk about cannabis. Crossstage says Devocado sounds delicious. If you ever see people on Twitter who have an avocado in their name that you follow, it's because they're a dev advocate, and they shorten advocate to avocado. A different ghost says, a THC startup, yeah, or making like the kind of software that dispensaries handle their business with. I'd be cool with that too. That's one enterprise software that'd be super cool with doing, is like software for dispensaries, or even medical information about marijuana. I'd be cool with all that. That'd be awesome. That'd be a dream job. Hey, everybody's rolling in now. Thanks for rolling in, everybody. We got a different ghost. We got K-Coughs. Man, everybody's coming in. Thank you so much. Indifferent Ghost says too much government for the software. Fuck. All right, well, there goes that plan. All right, let's hop back into Recursion. Indifferent Ghost says, how's your webpage to Reptar? I'm thinking. K-Cough says, my spider sense was tingling. Discord didn't give me a notification. Hey, everybody. Everybody out there watching right now, if you want notifications on Discord when my stream's happening, please, 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 please go to Leon's Discord. Go to Leon's Discord and I'll go ahead and go, I'll open my Discord. I'll open my Discord and I'll show you. I'll open my Discord and I'll show you exactly what to do. Let me go ahead and grab the link. All right, so here's a link to the Discord. I'm gonna go ahead and post the link to the Discord. Oh, that's not right. Come on, copy. All right, here's the link to the Discord. So if you want Discord, Streamlabs, fucking the bot. After me searching for it, the bot was just like, "Here's the link." God, asshole. All right, my Discord's opening. I'm going to show everyone where they can go. Where they can go to make sure they're getting. Make sure they're getting notifications. All right. So over here in Learn with Leon, we've got our channels, right? We got our channels. Reptar Bro said we did an Anki review in Discord today. Also, fuck the bot, LMAO. No, I don't. The bot's an asshole for its timing. When I was up there searching all through the chat for it, it came and didn't let me know. But let's go ahead and I'll show everyone. If you could do this, even if you think you're going to get notifications, let's go ahead and go through this. If you want notifications when the stream team goes live, and this means for people who join the stream team in the future too, go to Discord. You're going to go to the stream team, which is in the 100 devs. You know, the stream team there, and you're going to right click. You're going to right click and you see notification settings. Instead of only mentions, you're going to do all messages. The stream team channel is only going to be used for going live or messages pertaining to those people going live on the stream team. So if you go ahead and do all messages, you're going to get notifications every time I or someone else on the stream team posts about going live. You can see the last 3 posts over the last, you know, it was set up here originally and I left some messages, but the last 3 posts have just been going live. It won't clutter up your notifications or anything like that. Just make sure you come over to your stream team, right click, go to notification settings and do all messages. That way you're set up for when everyone goes live from here on out. Perfect. All right. Glad we covered that. Let's get into recursion now. Let's change this to a recursive function, okay? So now, with a recursive function, God, this seems like so long ago, doesn't it? I don't even remember my train of thought. Keikoff says, I'm used to the red circle when Leon goes live. Yeah, that red circle, for sure. I actually turned off the red circle because it was so frustrating for me. So now, instead of doing just a regular iterating loop, we're going to convert this. Actually, I should probably leave it up. I should leave it up so we can kind of take a look at both of them. So let's convert this to a recursive function. I know people have a lot of trouble with recursion, so let's talk about it. So we're going to do function. We're going to do recurse up. And we're going to still give it a max number, max num, and we're going to go ahead and start converting this over. So the first thing we want to do is we want to check to see if the max number is 0, because that's where we're starting, right? We want this to, we have this prompt here, create a function that counts from 0 to the max number parameter. Ahmed, thank you so much for following. It means a lot to me. Thank you so much. Really appreciate it. How you doing today, Ahmed? Carcera says, yes, a common pattern for me is to leave the old code and comment it all out and start the new code at the bottom so I have the old code in the file as a reference as I rewrite it. Yeah, for right now, we just named it something different, so we're going to have two unique, distinct functions and with how they handle this problem for right now. Let's go ahead and compare them both. So we're going to use recurse up. So what happens with recursion, the goal of recursion, is to maintain our scope as we move through different layers of values. It's very interesting. We're going to dip into different levels of scope, nested scopes. And that's really the core of how recursion works, is it utilizes our ability to create a new scope with curly braces. And that's what it's really playing on. So let's go ahead and try it out. So the first thing we have to do is have a conditional to check to see if it's 0, which is what's called our base case. So we're going to do max number strictly equal to 0. And we can actually do less than or equal to, just in case the number that comes in isn't above 0. But we said we want it to count to 0, so we're going to return 0. And the reason I'm choosing to use an array here is because we need a data structure in order to track this information. We're going to need a data structure. And at the end, we'll go ahead and remove the value or values from that data structure. The spread operator will come in handy. It's a good thing we talked about it, right? It's a good thing we talked about that spread operator. So if it's max number, we want to return a 0 because we can't count. If it's our max number, we've got nothing to count. It's just 0 because we're counting from 0 upward. Excuse me. Because we're counting from 0 upward. Now, here's where we handle the counting portion. If it is not less than or equal to 0, we're just going to do something. We've already got a return in here. Does everybody here know that when a function returns, it ends? When a function returns, the function immediately ends. It ends its run and it returns that value and nothing else in that function runs. So if it comes up where max number is less than or equal to 0, we're just going to say more code. If the max number is less than or equal to 0, more code will never get to more code. It will return that 0, that array with 0 inside, and that'll be it. That's it. It's done. It won't go any further. So we don't have to use something like else if here. Normally you'll see else or else if. We don't have to because there's a return in our if statement. So we don't have to use else or else if. It returns otherwise. So we're good. So this is where the counting portion happens. So what we're going to do is we're going to say, hey, thank you for the follow, Mocha. Is it Mocha? Thank you so much for following. It really means a lot to me. I hope you're enjoying the stream. We're converting an iterating loop to a recursive function. So let's go ahead and let's talk about what to do next here. So we've got const, and we're going to say nums, and we're going to say nums is equal to, here's where the recursion kicks in, is because we've got a large number and we want to get to 0, right? We're going to keep going through this until we get to 0. That's our goal, is to get to 0. Because then we want to count back upward. And I'll explain it as we go. Zader says, could we keep calling using the max num, decrement it each time, push the new value to the array, and reverse the array and then spread? Absolutely. Absolutely, Zader, but we don't actually have to. We'll talk about the exact. You got it like 90%. There was just one thing in there that wasn't necessary, and it's the reverse the array. We'll talk about it. Mocha says, love functional programming. That's great. That's great. We're talking about functional programming today and the benefits of it. Keikoff says, I'm just now Googling recursive function, never heard of it before. That's fine, Keikoff. We're talking about, we're gonna mock an iterative function with a recursive function. And then we're gonna talk about a way recursion can help us solve some of these issues later. So let's go ahead and do const nums equals, and we're going to go ahead and recurse. We're gonna call recurse up again. We're going to call recurse up again. And this time we're going to do max num minus 1. Now you may be wondering, why are we doing max number minus 1? So the reason we're doing max number minus 1 is because we want to get to 0. 0 is our base case, and max number is, if it's not less than or equal to 0, it's gotta be higher than 0, right? It's gotta be higher than 0. If it's not less than or equal to 0, it's gotta be higher than 0. We want to get to the point where it's at 0 so we can start counting up. But the way we count up is through function returns. That's why I felt it was so important earlier to go over the function returns. Chat, what is a function call? What is a function call to those people who were here earlier? I told you to put it in your Ankies. You better put it in your Ankies. What's a function call? So if a function returns something, where does it go? Where does it go? What is a function call? Why do we call a pure function? It was one sentence. It was one very specific sentence. Bombaloni first got it. It's a function call is its return. A function call is its return. Zader, exactly right. A function is a value that it returns. Exactly. Indie Blow, hey, how's it going? Indie Blow says, Dab, just want to stop and say hello. You rock, keep it up. Thank you so much, Indie Blow. How's the job going? How's the job going? Indie Blow up here getting a job. Oof. Indie Blow says, busy as fuck. I'm glad it's going well, though. Busy as fuck is good. Busy as fuck is good. That's a good place to be as a dev. It would really suck to be doing nothing. Indie Blow says, waiting on CC info to set up client emails. That's great. Yeah, everybody, if you haven't yet, congratulate Indie Blow. Indie Blow got a job as a dev. Excellent job. That's what's up. That's the goal. That's why I'm out here. Also increasing, understanding, but jobs first and foremost. All right, let's see. Client step of All right. So now that we're aware, and anybody, I bet Indie Blow would be cool with talking to you. You can confirm this or not, Indie Blow. I'm sure a bunch of people have questions about what it's like to be a dev. If you could let people know if and where they can contact you to ask questions. Indie Blow says lots of copy and paste so far. Fucking awesome. I mean, I'm sure people are really, really interested in what your day-to-day's like. If you wanted to write a blog post or something, I bet people would be super interested. If you wanted to take some time just to talk to people individually or as a group, I bet they would be very interested in what your day-to-day is like. Indie Blow says Twitter @IndieBlow. Bull said I missed it, but whatever it is, congratulations. Bull, Indie Blow got a job as a dev. Reach out to them at Indie Blow on Twitter and ask them some questions about what being a dev is like as someone who's new to the dev field. Ask them some questions. Get some answers. Asking questions, getting answers. Account restricted, says KCOS. All right, so now we know. We talked about it. We talked about how a function is its return. Big props to Indie Blow again. We're going to move back into some recursive functions. Thank you so much for your continued support, Indie Blow. It means a lot to me. Thank you for stopping by. Let's learn a little bit about recursion again. So we know that a function call is its return, right? So we can call inside the scope of this function recurse up. We can call recurse up again. But in order to get to that base case, we have to go deeper. So I'm interested in chat. Explain scope to me. While I'm getting ready to talk about this, I want to see who out there can explain scope to me. I know I'm putting a lot of pressure on y'all. I know this is a very tough question. Cross says mouthwash. Bull says accessibility of code. Kind of accessibility of code. Accessibility of code. That's not a bad answer. Kent Izzle says, "Damn, that's nice, Dean Bull." Medium of Fry says, "Scope has to do with encapsulation." Sure. Scope can have something to do with encapsulation. Sure. Klaykoff says, "Context." Cross H says, "The block in which code is accessible." It's a pretty good answer. Way to go, Cross H. Indie Blow says, "Every single one of us would be able to do what I've been doing." And in parentheses, Google. And wow, I guess my account had to be verified. Thanks, guys. Zader says, "You mean as in the scope of the current function?" Yeah, all kinds of scope. Zader, absolutely. Current function scope is one of the things we could do. Bombaloni says, "Scope defines the part of the code that is able to see and use any given variable. Scope depends on where it is." Good answers. Everybody's got some good answers. The block which code is accessible is an interesting one. So what scope is scope is either global, which is what we've got in our script, or it's local. Those are the two main types of scope, global and local. And you can have nested scopes as well. You can have a scope within a scope. Zader asks, are you going to put the R outside the current function scope? You'll see, Zader. We'll get there. We'll get there. I'm going to use a little different tactic. You'll see. Excuse me. Sorry about that. All right. So scope is a place. What it is almost like an individual little universe. And that little individual universe can access things in the universe it exists in and the universe above it, but nowhere else. It's like its own little world. The things that happen in this block right here, they can access the scope in which the function is defined, which is our global scope, or it can access what is within these curly braces. But it can't access what's within these curly braces right here. Our recurse up function can't access what's within the curly braces of function count up, because they exist at the same level. They don't exist within one another. If one existed within one another, they could be accessed. But their scopes are separate. They are not nested in any way, so they are inaccessible to each other. So let's say a multiverse exists out there. Our global scope is the multiverse. And a single universe is this function right here. That's a single universe, and this is a single universe. Both of these exist in the multiverse but can't touch each other. This is for nerds out there. This is a nerd-splanation. These don't exist they can't touch each other, but we can then expose things later to create these breaches in the multiverse. That's not what we're worried about right now. But imagine within a universe that you could create another universe. If I did something like this, function miniverse, you can go right here and this is creating another universe within our recurse up universe. It's creating a little miniverse. And this miniverse can access its parent universe. It can access its parent universe, and it can access its grandparent universe, which is the global scope right now. But it couldn't access, let's say, one that was inside it. Interesting. The smaller we get into these miniverses, they seem to cut off more and more. There's a separation here. There's a separation. Now, with recursion, what we're doing is creating a bunch of miniverses. We're creating a bunch of scopes within scopes. And if you know how functions run, we execute within a specific scope. So what we're doing is creating a scope which runs. And if we get down to this point right here, when we call this function, we're creating another scope that runs, and another scope that runs, and another scope. That's how recursion works, is it creates these nested scopes that go into smaller and smaller universes that have access to the one above it, but not the ones below it. And this return right here, we'll see that this return right here passes the recursive function back up through these universes. Carcer says, it's funny that we're using miniverse here as a universally understood concept to help explain. That is super funny. Thanks, Rick and Morty. Yeah, Crossage says, hold up, that episode of Rick and Morty with the spaceship battery was recursion all along? Yeah, that was recursion. That's what recursion is. That's exactly what recursion is, Cross-H, is that Rick and Morty episode with the battery. That's recursion. Kakoff says, holy, yeah, that's recursion. Absolutely. We're creating little mini-verses and then we're passing insane scientists into them and up from them. Those are our values. We're passing these psychopathic scientists into and out of our mini-verses. Cross-H says, function, keep summer safe. Oh, that's great. Yeah, it's all part of function, keep summer safe. All right. Kakoff said, oh my God. Make Dav live up to his name while talking about recursive mini-verses. Jesus Christ. All right, let's do it. Bombaloni, you're going to get to see... Oh, no, I didn't get anything. Hold on. It got clogged up. Indy Blow says, oh, I'm going to smack a bull. Bombaloni. That was me taking a dab from a cartridge. Now, I could have lit a torch and then used some kind of glass or quartz structure to heat it with that torch and then put the oil on it. But cartridges are just a very convenient way to take a dab. And people will try to say that dabs and cartridges are very different things. I think that Leon would call those people nerds. I think that Leon would say, don't let the nerds ruin your dabs. Carcera says, now we're in the multiverse. That's right. And thanks, Kakoff. Cheers. Yeah, cheers to you, Andy Blow. Very big cheers. All right. Cross-H says, the ganja keepers of the cannabis world. That's exactly right. All right. So now what we're doing, and let's talk just a little bit more about the way a function runs in regards to scope. So when a function returns, its scope ends, okay? Or if you get to the end of the curly braces first. If you get to the end curly brace before returning, a function ends. Those are two of the ways. There are more. There are more. We don't need to get into them right now to understand recursion. But there are more ways to end a function. Two of the ways you can do it that we're concerned with right now are returning and getting to the end of our curly braces. Those are two ways to end scope. But if we don't get to the end of the curly braces or return from that function specifically, from that scope, then the function scope is still there. It exists as long as the function has not ended. Now, people in chat, is JavaScript a synchronous or asynchronous language? We've talked about this. Is JavaScript a synchronous or asynchronous language? Synchronous, that's exactly right. It's a synchronous language, which means that it is read from left to right, top to bottom, and if something is happening, nothing else can happen. Only one thing can happen at a time. So, when we get to this function call right here, when we get to this function call, and it creates its own scope, when does this scope end? When does this main scope end? We call this recursive function right here, and it creates a new scope. When do we get to this curly brace? When does that happen? We have a new scope here with recurse up. We know when we call a function, yeah, we don't hit the curly when we call this. We call this before we hit the curly. We call this before we hit the curly. So it creates a new scope. which means that scope has to end. Until this scope ends, right here, from our second recurse-up, our first recurse-up still exists. That's how recursion works, is it keeps our scope alive. It keeps our main top scope alive, and we keep creating smaller and smaller scopes that cannot end until the smallest scope ends. Once the smallest scope ends, then the scope above it ends. Then the scope above it ends. Then the scope above it ends until we get all the way back to the global scope. That's how recursion works, and that is the trick. Zader says we keep passing the recursive function to the stack until the parameter is met. That's exactly right. We keep passing a value to the recursive function until the parameter is met. And once that parameter gets met, this condition right here, this max number less than or equal to 0, once that gets met, we get to return. What happens when we return, everybody? What happens to scope when a function returns? When a function returns, what happens to the scope of that function? It ends. That's exactly right. It ends. And once that scope ends, we move up to the next scope, right? When this function in our global scope ends, we lose the scope of this function and return to the global scope. Well, what about this function inside here? When this function call that we called inside recurse up, when that ends, what scope do we return to? When this call's scope ends, what scope do we return to? This is the trick of recursion. This is what recursion is about, is this trick. The one above it, says Kkoffs. The one above it. And Cross H said the base class. In this case, yes, it would be the base class. But Kkoffs got the trick. Kkoffs got the trick. It's the one above it. Whenever a function ends, whenever a scope ends, we return to the scope above that scope. A lot of the time, very often, that's our global scope. Often that's our global scope. And Carcer has a point to make that single-threaded and synchronous are not the same. They're definitely similar, but they are different. So JavaScript is similar to a synchronous language. But it is single-threaded instead. That's a very good point. It's a very good point. You were answering Cross H, whose question I missed. I'm very sorry about that, baby. I'm sorry I missed your question. Thank you for answering. Thank you for answering that, Carcer. Roughway Dell, thank you for coming in. And Coughs says I can skip the first K. The name was taken, so I just added another one. Perfect. Coughs. If I forget, it's because I've been calling you K-Coughs for like 6 months. I will try my best to remember. It's going to be a habit I have to break. I don't want to dead name you on K-Coughs. You're going to be Coughs now. You're going to be Coughs now. Indifferent Ghost said I was going to shake my nerdy fist, but I decided it wasn't worth the issue. Yeah, that's fair. Bound, thank you for coming by, Bound. Gregory Bound in the house. We're talking about recursion. K-Coughs, don't worry about synchronous and asynchronous yet. We'll get to it. Right now we're talking about recursion. Coughs. Coughs when you get back in to this stream if you decide you want to again. After this nonsense. Hey, thank you for following Roughway Dell. Thank you so much for following. Hope you enjoy the stream. We're going into some recursion. Coughs. Yeah, we've talked about it a few times. We'll talk about it again. Wipe it from your memory for now. We're handling recursion. Recursion's a very tricky subject. But Coughs found the key. Is that when we call this function inside this function, until we meet this if statement, we'll just keep creating smaller and smaller scopes. We'll keep creating nested scopes over and over until we get a return. And then it moves up to the scope above it. Its parent scope. It moves up to that scope. And then when that scope ends, we move up to the next scope, and we'll move all the way back up to the scope that called this function. That's how recursion works. Isn't that very interesting? Bound says, regex. I have your colors for you, Debs. Yeah, awesome, G-Bound. Awesome. Yeah, we'll get to it as soon as we can. We'll talk about those colors, and we'll try to talk about some design. I'll have some design ready when we tackle that. Indifferent Ghost says, coughs, synchronous top to bottom, left to right, like reading. Async, there's two cues, and you and your friend are having two different conversations. When you stop talking, he starts talking. Hey, that's probably better. It's probably better to not talk over each other. I wouldn't know. I talk to a screen. Roughway Dell says, what are you showing here? We're talking about recursion. We're talking about some recursion here. So now, we know that once this function is called, it will create a smaller scope within Recurs Up. So, when we create that smaller scope, every single time we're doing max number minus 1. If we started with 5, if 5 was our highest level, we check this, the condition isn't true, we don't return 0. We call Recurs Up again as 5 minus 4. I'm sorry, 5 minus 1, which is 4. So our max number on this call is 4. We check for 4 less than or equal to 0. Not true. We continue on. We get down here to max number and we do 4 minus 1, which is 3. And we run through this function every time. 3, nope. 3 minus 1 is 2. We check 2, nope. 2 minus 1 is 1. We check 1, nope. 1 minus 1 is 0. We check that value. Finally, we have 0 is less than equal to 1. Finally, we have 0 is less than equal to 1. And we return 0. In this case, I returned an array, and we'll talk very soon about why I did that. Oh, I'm gonna have to take a drink, sorry. Ooh. That dab is taking hold. You can tell how, because I'm so passionate. I'm so passionate about the code. So we finally return that 0. It's okay, Coughs, you understand it better than you know. As soon as you said we return to the scope above it, you got the trick. It just takes practice. Oh, that was to a different ghost. Oh, that was to a different ghost. That was to a different ghost. Okay. You probably got recursion. You knew. All right, so we move up here. So folks, when we call Recurs Up, and max number is 1, what is the value of Recurs Up, chat? That's my question, is what is the value of Recurs Up when max number is 1? What is Recurs Up equal to? Zader says it is equal to 0. You are all very close. You are all very close. Gbound says, I think I fixed that dependency issue. Yeah, sure. Push the update. Let's see. We'll check it out. Ah, there we go. Coughs. Oh, I said K-Coughs again, didn't I? Damn it. Coughs. Izzy got it. Array with 0 in it. That's right. It's an array with 0 in it. Interesting. Sam says, sup party people, wish I could have gotten here sooner. It's okay, Sam. We're talking about converting iteration to recursion. Yes, it's an array with 0 in it. Now, if I wanted to get an array at the end of this, if I wanted to, every time I call this function, have an array come up and handle an array, there are some interesting ways I could make this array. I could say, we could do the nums array here, and then we can add the current number with nums.push, nums.push max num. That would add the value to our array. Let's test it. And then we're gonna return nums. Let's go ahead and test it out. Let's run this function real quick. I got some unshift's interesting. We'll look at what happens with push. Yeah, we'll take a look in a little bit, Bound. We'll take a look in a little bit. We're in the middle of a recursion lesson right now. I don't want to break this. We're on a roll. So we're gonna call this function. We're gonna do recurse up, and we're gonna do 5. And let's see what happens. We're gonna give it just a 5. Oh, geez, come on. There we go. All right. And this is the section of code we're dealing with right now. We're gonna do node recursion.js. Oh, I didn't console log it. Zader said, "Do we need to console log it?" Yes, we do. Yes, we do. See, this is the fault of the dab. Is I can still do recursion, but I forget ancillary things. So does everyone see why this is working? So what we've got is when the first one comes up, Coughs is laughing. Zader says I always make that mistake. Yeah, it's an easy mistake to make. It's an easy mistake to make, especially after you start dipping into like using dev tools to step through your code. Using console log is like something you don't do as much anymore. I still console log quite a bit for this stream. But I don't really do it too much in my own code anymore. I step through the code with a debugger, and coming up soon we'll have to do a class on debuggers. It'll be very fun because people are going to start trying to debug their Node applications. But you can see we've got an array. So we keep going down. I walked us through. A Different Ghost has literally just console logged about 5 seconds ago. Well, I still need to be console logging. I just haven't console logged too much recently, I guess. I'm always checking debuggers. Let's see. Bob Maloney says, that sounds great. I'm up for debuggers. Yeah. If it's something really easy, sure. Like, I console log all the time for this stream. So I console log constantly. CrossH says, ABC, always be console.logging. Yeah. So we talked about how this works. When we get to 1 minus 1, it's 0. So we finally return that array of 0. And nums equals an array 0. We have code 0. We have an array with a value of 0 in there. Then we push 1 in there. Because remember, if max num is 1 here, we've got 1 minus 1. So then we're going to push 1 in, because that's the value of max number. We're counting. We're saving these values. And then when we return nums, we go up to the next level, because 1 wasn't the value we passed in. We had to recurse from 2. So max number is 2 here. So when we called recurse up 2 minus 1, that scope ended. And what we're left with is an array that says 0, 1. Then we push that 2 from 2 minus 1 on there to the end. Then we return nums. And that just didn't come from nowhere. We had to do max num minus 3 to get 2. We had to call 3 minus 1 to get 2. So we just keep putting those numbers into the array and returning that array. Zader says, makes so much sense now. I was putting my array in the global scope and unshifting during the decrement. Interesting. Interesting. Yeah, this is the way you would recurse, where you carry the information from the very base case up through the parent cases. That's the value of recursion. using returns, function returns, to pass that information into the scope that called the function. That's what returns do. Remember when we talked about how function calls are their returns? What we use those returns for, what we do is we send some data to a lower scope. The lower scope does something with that data and returns that value to the scope we're working in. This is why scope is such an interesting concept in JavaScript. And I assume other programming languages. But I really love the concept of scope. As soon as I understood scope, it like changed everything for me. As soon as I understood scope, it changed everything. Coughs says, I don't see how we count up. So, Coughs, I'm going to run through it once more. So, let's say we put recurse up 5 here, right? We put recurse up 5 here. And we have this if statement with a return. It's always checking to see if it's our base case. We've crafted this function to count from 0 to the number we provide. So, we check to see if that max number is less than or equal to 0. 5 is not. So this condition does not trigger. So we can ignore this for now. We can ignore 11 to 13 for now. We don't need to worry about it. It doesn't happen. So, you see down here on line 14, we call recurse up again from inside the same scope. And we feed it 5, right? This is equal to 5 in our very first instance. We're calling this function with the parameter of 5. So max number is equal to 5 right now. Are we following? Do you have that, Coughs? I just want to make sure. Does that make sense? I just want to make sure. Yes. Okay. It does make sense. Okay. So then we have 5 minus 1, which is 4. So after putting 5 in our main call, the function itself is now calling itself again with the value of 4, because that's max number minus 1. So we start over again at the top. We have a new instance of this recurse up function. So inside our original recurse up, we have another recurse up. And its value is 4. Does that make sense? Inside our recurse up 5, that function has called recurse up 4. Kakoff says, holy shit, yes. That's right. That's what I was looking for. Holy shit, yes. That's what I was looking for. It calls the whole thing again. And again, and again, exactly. Exactly. That's the trick. That's the trick. That's the trick. And we get it down. Now that 4's in this space, we know we call this one with 3. It's 3 now. And then we go deeper to 2, deeper to 1, and finally we get to 0, and we say, we have reached our base case. We've reached our base case. Let us return now. And this is the value we return. And then we start working upward, backward. We start working backward through everything we've done and returning those values. We go deep and then we come back and bring information with it. That's the power of the function return. That's the power of controlling scope. That's the power of parameters. That's why we covered all of these things before I started this recursion lesson, is because all of those things are the integral powerhouses of making recursion work. Bombaloni said, this is great. I understood the general concept, but was having trouble with the mechanics. Kakoff says, wow, when it finally hits 0, it doesn't get called again. That's exactly right. Kakoffs, when you hit your base case in a recursion, you don't call anymore. You start ending scopes. Remember, no scope has ended until we hit our base case. And then we're like, okay, we've hit our base case. It's time to end my scope. And then we move up to that upper scope. So that means that's this call right here. And then we do a thing. We did a thing. We did a thing where we pushed a value. And then we ended that scope. And once that scope ends, we return to the scope above it and finish that scope. So you see, what we have done has opened a series of scopes. We opened a series of scopes from largest to smallest. That's how recursion works. You open a series of scopes from largest to smallest. And then you close those scopes again from smallest to largest, bringing information back to the scope you're working in. You bring that information all the way from the smallest scope up through your higher scopes, back to the scope you originally called the recursive function from. You've got scopes, parameters, returns. That is some mother-functional programming. That's why we did the lesson beforehand. I hope that makes sense, how we tied all of that information in. Carcer says, now some comments could be nice in here. We could have some comments would be nice in here above the base case, above the line where we do the subtraction and pushing. Sure, I'm actually going to take the pushing away real quick. We're going to do that. That's a good idea. Let's add some comments. Our base case is 0, so we check for this every time the function is called recursively. And then right here we say, in order for this function to reach 0, which is our base case, we have to subtract the value of max num as it exists in its current scope. One from the value of, subtract 1 from the value of max num as it exists in its current scope. Let's see. Let's see. M's to Bomb says, smooth, mother function. Yeah, I like that one. That's a mother functional programming. Zader says, finally understand this properly. I am so glad, Zader. That is exactly what I wanted. Fuck yeah. I'm so excited. I love it. I love when it hits. Kakoff says, nums, push, max num was confusing me. I thought we pushed the base argument over and over again. Yeah, it's as it exists in its current scope. As it exists in its current scope, which makes us think that it will change. That's a comment that gives you a clue that it's going to change. Imstabomb said, because if you didn't check if it's 0, it would be keep going to -1, -2, -3, -4. Yes, that's exactly right, Imstabomb. That is exactly right. It would keep counting down. We need a time to tell it to stop. We need a time to tell it to stop and end its scope, or else it will constantly continue creating smaller scopes. But we have to tell it to stop at some point, or we don't get any information back. Carcer says, when you're done or not at all is fine. Just in general, recursion is easier to understand with comments if you come back to the code or working on a team. Carcer, yeah, absolutely. Your advice is invaluable. That's why I took you up on it. Absolutely. You were exactly right that some comments would be a good thing to do. It also helps to explain for people who may be visually impaired. I should probably be doing that for not visually impaired, auditorily impaired. People who have trouble hearing may not be getting this information that I'm saying. They may only have what I have on screen to go off of, and so I should be commenting. I should be commenting for accessibility purposes. G-Bound says, I'm still catching up on my JavaScript. Shows how much stuff I forgot. Then again, it's been the order of 15 years since I did any. G-Bound says, comment all the things. Yeah, I should be commenting, especially for people, for people who need it, for sure. Cross H says, some streamers have subtitle generators. Yeah, fuck, I gotta spend some time. Does it ever feel like you all have so much to learn all the time that you just can't make time for everything? Does anybody else feel that way? Is it just me? Hold on. Is it just me? Or does anyone else feel like there's not enough hours in the day? I think that's just a me problem. I think it's just a me problem. G-Bound says Google has an accessibility thing you can make text-to-speech thing out of. Yeah. Absolutely. I gotta look it up. Thank you for that. Thank you for that reference. I'll go check it out. yeah, just me. So, there's a couple things we can do to improve this even. Make it even smoother. There's something we can do to make it even smoother. You want to see this shit? This is going to be amazing. Izzy says, taking a little break before Leon's class, I'll see y'all over. Yeah, absolutely, Izzy. Absolutely. Ken Tizzle says, been spending 8 to 9 hours a day on Leon's material every day. Definitely not enough hours in a day. Exactly. Not enough hours. I gotta somehow find time to go, get my Twitch stream set up with a text logger, and then I also have to learn React. And then I also have to, be ready for my next stream where I'm going to talk about something. It's a lot. I gotta try to do my own projects. It's tough. But we soldier on, right? When everyone was saying, "Oh my God, I got that," when Coughs was like, "Holy shit, I got that." That's what I came here for. That's why this time is valuable. I'm gonna make this time for as long as people have breakthroughs like that. I'm gonna. This is my time that I get to use to do something I love, which is making those switches flip. I love it. I fucking love it. It's my favorite thing. Yeah, no, thank you, Coughs. Thank you for coming by here and learning. It means a lot to me. Coughs. Sam says, best feeling? Yeah, it's the best feeling in the world. Feels great. Alright, so let's see. We're going to make this even smoother. You want to see some really cool shit? Remember how we were talking about spreads? How we were talking about the spread operator? Does anyone see how we could use the spread operator here? Can anyone tell me how they would use the spread operator here? This is some interesting shit. This is a tricky brain puzzle. You just learned recursion. You just learned spread operators. Cough says, I don't even know what that is. Oh yeah, I should pull up the code. That's oh shit, I pulled a Leon. P2 to Trizzle just gave me the spread operator. I love that. P2 to Trizzle, no, sorry, there's no follow along materials. I'm really sorry. They had me take a dab. So they paid to watch me be ridiculous. So let's see. P2 to Drizzle, no. Sadly, no follow-along materials. I'm just doing code review. Someone asked about recursion, and then we came up with a lesson on the spot. That's how I do. You come to me with a question, I'll make a lesson on the spot. That's what this stream's about. So does anybody Can anybody out there tell me how to use the spread operator here? Can anybody tell me how to use the spread operator here to make this code even more concise? Where are we getting arrays? Because the spread operator works on arrays and array-like objects, right? The spread operator works on arrays and array-like objects. Where are we getting arrays? Where could we spread? Bombaloni says, I'm not sure. I'd start putting it everywhere and seeing what happens. That's exactly right. I mean, that's exactly what I would do when I was learning the spread operator. That's exactly right. I would put it everywhere and just see what the fuck happens. Sam says, replacing push somehow. That is exactly right, Sam. We are replacing push somehow with the spread operator. Not having to call another method is great. Being able to just spread an array and have its values fill another container is much more concise. So let's go ahead and take a look. So where are we getting an array? On every recursion, somebody tell me the places that are an array. We've got right here, I know right here is an array, but there's an array somewhere else in our code. Imsdabomb says, is it just array 1, 2, 3, etc.? Yes, Imsdabomb. Yes, that's exactly right. It is just 1, 2, 3, etc. Nums. Yes, nums. That's exactly right. Nums is an array. Nums is an array. That's exactly right. So, we can get rid of this push. Nums is an array. Let's say we created an array around it and used the spread operator. You saw, remember, we just talked about this. We just talked about doing this with an HTML collection. We just talked about this. Isn't it amazing how we tied all of it together? We just had that little lesson and we've tied every single thing together. So now what we've done is created a new array just with the nums value spread in it. And guess what? We can also add to that array. We can also add to that array max num. What we've done is spread numbers within this array, and then we said after you put those values in this array in that order, I want you to put max num on there too. I want you to put max number on there too. Just tack it onto the end in our new array that we spread from the previous array. We've just created a brand new array that has all of the num values in order up to that comma and then max number. And that is exactly the same as this. Let me go ahead and type it out again. Line 21 is exactly the same as lines 23 to 24. We've tacked that max number in the last position of the array, just like a push would. Isn't that interesting? That is so interesting. We've used the spread operator instead of push. Let's say we wanted to put it at the front. Let's say we wanted to put it at the front instead. We don't have to change pop. We don't have to do shift or unshift or whatever. We can just do max num in the front. If we do max num in the front, we get a count down instead of a count up. Let's test it first. I want to prove to you that this works first. Let's go ahead and save. Let's run it again. Clear this. Boom. Imsabom says, can we see what the output is? Yes, sorry about that. I should have done that first. I should have just done that instead of going off on my brain tangent. So this is the output first. You see, let me walk us through it real quick. When we get down to 0, we've got an array with 0 in it, right? What is the value of array 0 when it's spread out? Chat, what's the value of array 0, array with the value 0, when it's spread, when we use the spread operator on it? What's the value? An array where the only value is 0 and it's spread, what is the value? Yes, that's exactly right. P2 to drizzle, bomb baloney. Exactly. Its value is the number 0. Aw, thank you so much, Charlie. Its number is the value 0. Now, so what we've got here, when max number is 1 and it does 1 minus 1, and we get 0, we return that array with 0, nums is equal to the array with 0 in it, right? That's what it's equal to. So, when I spread that array 0, we have the value 0, and we have the value 1. 1 minus 1 is 0. This returns array 0. 0, 1. Imstabomb says it would never reach nums if it is 0, correct? That's exactly right, Im. That's exactly right. It would never reach nums if it was 0. Let's go ahead and run a few examples. Carceres made a good point, constantly proving that it works and printing it to the console is very nice. Yeah, let's do it. Let's do some even more printing to the console. Let's do console.log nums. Let's do console.log nums first. Clear? So, we're console logging nums. We're seeing console log nums before it's spread out. We're console logging nums, and this is how recursion works. Do you notice that this kind of nested structure looks very much like if a bunch of functions were nested in each other? We're pulling this information with us as we move up. It's very interesting. I need another drink of water. Now, yeah, no problem, TechnoGhost. TechnoGhost, I would definitely come back and check out what you missed. There was some good stuff there. Let's also console log nums. I'm going to log it on a separate line, just so we can... we're going to log spread nums, right? Nums. Clear. So you can see what happens. The first value here is nums. The second log here is nums once it's spread. And that's what's getting put into our array that we're returning. What's getting spread is this first set right here in the array. I'm saying I want 0, and then I want 0, 1, which are two different values. Those two different values get comma separated when I spread them. It doesn't log the comma separation in the console, but because they are two different values, they are comma separated as they come out of the spread. So what I really get here is 0, 1, 2 when max number is equal to 2. When it's 3, I get 0, 1, 2, 3. Imstabomb said, could you do nums plus nums and spread nums plus spread nums? My eyes keep making it look weird. Sure. Let's go ahead and log it. Let's go ahead and log it. We're going to console log. So let me go ahead and put it first. So this is nums. And this is spread. Absolutely. Sorry about that, Emstabom, and thank you for being so aware. Like, what an amazing ability to be so aware of what you need to understand. Thank you for providing me with a tool for your understanding. That was very intuitive of yourself. That's excellent. That's a great skill to have. That's an amazing skill to have. To be really intuitive about what you need. Damn. We should all be so lucky, right? Or good about checking with ourselves. I'm going to clear that real quick. I'm going to try it one more time. Okay. So you can see we've got nums, spread nums, nums, spread nums, nums, spread nums. And so what we're doing is we're putting, when we do our array with a spread operator in it, you can see spread nums is just the value 0. So we get 0, 1 here. Remember, nums is equal to 0, the array 0, when max number is equal to 1. So we get 0, 1. And when we return that array, max num is equal to 2 when we get that value 1 to feed in. So our max num in this higher scope is 2. So then we get 0, 1, 2. We end this scope, give that array as a value up to our higher scope, and that higher scope has a max num of 3. So we put max num 3 at the end. And then this scope resolves. We return that value up to the higher scope. It has 3 in it now at the end. And that's where max num equals 4. Does that make sense? Maybe this spread operator was a little too much for right now. Maybe this spread operator was a little too much. Is it making sense? Imsabom says, oh yeah, it makes sense. Okay. Everyone was just quiet because it was making sense. Cough says, I'm trying to read what it does, but no. I'm very sorry, Coughs. Let's check it out. Let's check it off. Did you understand when it was like this, Coughs? Did you understand it when it was like this? Where we were just pushing the values into the array? Coughs got that. Coughs got that. That was, you just don't get the spread operator. Oh, Coughs understands recursion, but not the spread operator. All right, play around with the spread operator. All it does is, think of it like this. It just knocks the brackets off of a bunch of values. If you have an array, the spread operator just knocks the brackets off. And then you just have your values totally exposed. In the same order, comma separated. That's all the spread operator does. It knocks off the brackets of an array or array-like object. So I'm going to go back. So it just knocks the brackets right off. So we've got an array, and nums is an array. We knock the brackets off with the spread operator, and then it just dumps the contents that were in the array into this new array I've created. Imstabomb says, oh, that's cool. I can see that being super useful. Yeah, it's super useful, for sure. It's so useful. We spent quite a bit of time talking about it earlier. It was super useful. A lot of people got a lot out of it. If you missed that, if you're here late and you missed our talks about function parameters, arguments, returns, and scope, we went over all of that today. And what it led up to was some functional recursion. That's what it all led to, was some functional recursion, because we used every one of those concepts. We also explained some very cool practical uses for the spread operator. This was a very intense class about functions, going from very basic functions through to the concept of recursion. It's been a tough one, everybody. I'm going to give you a free dab on that. This was a tough one. This was a tough one to come up with off the top of my head, but I enjoyed it. Good question. I'm so glad we got to talk about recursion. Art of Missy. Oh, I missed that you came in. Hey, how's it going? Missy's in the house. Yes, please rewatch. If you have trouble with function returns, scope, parameters, if any of that feels not totally not totally cool to you, make sure you rewatch it. Booty Liquor said came in late. Imps Bomb said came in late. That's okay. Yeah, give it a rewatch. Give it a rewatch. P2 to Trizzle says, will you be doing more examples on recursion in the future? If it comes up. I didn't know I was doing recursion today. I did not know I was doing recursion today, or functions, or going from functions from a very basic all the way up to recursion. I didn't know I was doing any of that when I walked in here today. I didn't know any of that shit when I got up this morning. And so that was all on the fly. All of that was on the fly. I don't know if you noticed, I didn't look at a single website. I just, that was just from my head. So I don't know. I'll talk about recursion as much as y'all want to talk about recursion. I'll try to look up some more interesting uses for recursion, because you can use recursion to like search files. You can use recursion to like go through file systems. That's what a lot of viruses. I think worms are that kind of virus, where it goes into like a file system and destroys things recursively. It goes as far as it can into a file system and then starts destroying files recursively. The reason it destroys them recursively is because you don't want to lose access to the scope above that file until you've gotten to the base case. Carcer, here is your stop and smell the flowers. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. I see some things going on here. Ryan Hawkins, thank you for coming by the stream. I was on a bit of a rant there. I was on a James Spicy rant. Thank you so much, Ryan Hawkins. Yes, check it out later. Check it out later. Count the Shells says, I saw a video on Node. I haven't looked into it too much, but is Node pretty much a library of objects that are found online and able to download locally? You're thinking more about NPM, which is the Node package manager, which allows you to pull in files from this package manager system. They don't have to be from that system, but that's what you're thinking of is NPM, where you can download dependencies. And they have chunks of code in there that give additional functionality to Node. Node is really just it's kind of like a browser in the terminal. It doesn't have a browser, it doesn't have a window, but it has a place where JavaScript runs. It has a place where JavaScript runs and can do different things, and it has access to its own native objects, just like JavaScript does. So that's what Node is it's a runtime environment for JavaScript. What you're thinking of are dependencies, which are things you can download locally and then use in order to add functionality to Node. If that makes sense, let me know. If it doesn't make sense, we can talk about it a little more. P2 to Drizzle said, isn't recursion how you delete a folder or something? Yes, recursion is how you delete a folder. If you've deleted a folder from the command line and used the flag R allows you, and M's to Bomb is describing it also. Yes, it will recursively delete each folder and file. But you'll notice, if you were to look into the functionality of it, it would go to the lowest file first and delete that file and then delete back upwards. Ooh, this stop and smell the roses is going hard. I just refilled this, so I'm getting a lot of vapor. Count Shell says, made sense. Just need to look into it more. Day one of actually looking at a node. Looks promising. That's good, yeah. Yeah, getting that there's like some online database that allows you to download objects, which you're exporting functions and objects. Functions are objects in a package manager. You know, you're getting access to a module. Yeah, that's a good beginning idea of it. That's a good way to, if you just applied what you said to npm, you're solid. Count Shells, or should I say, seems to have a lot of promises. Damn. I love it. I love it. Thrax says, that makes more sense. Or that makes sense. If you delete a high-level folder before deleting a lower-level file, then you didn't delete that file. Exactly. Carcer says, what is a server? Hopefully is an upcoming slide. Yeah, I think that's going to be an upcoming slide today. I think that's going to be today, Carcer. When we raid Leon in like 10 minutes. Oh my god. We spent that whole class talking about functions, but it was a great review. It was a great review on functions. I feel like this is a spot that has been a very hard point for people. It's been a very difficult time to understand functions, why we return functions, why we have arguments and parameters. All of these things are very tough to understand. I feel like it's been a real pain point. So anybody, oh shit, I'm knocking stuff over. Oh man, that count the flowers got me. I mean, that smell the flowers. That smell the flowers from Carcer got me. Oh man, you got me good, Carcer. You got me good. Oh, okay. But yes, it's very good. It was a very good review. All of these things are super integral to. It's hard to take advice from someone who's just like high and like knocking shit over. I'm sure. Yeah, totally wrecked. That's right, Tony. Wrecked. Totally wrecked. I'm exactly the person you want to listen to about coding, right? We're supposed to listen to this guy about coding? Imstabomb said, I try to look at functions as people. Each function or person you ask to do something and return with a response if they do. If you don't ask the person to do something, doesn't mean they don't exist, they just don't do anything. That's an interesting way to look at it, Imstabomb. Interesting way. Interesting way. I started off this stream talking about how function blocks are like Mad Libs. They're like Mad Libs, and your parameters at the top of a function are just where you ask for things like verbs. They're placeholders. You know, in a Mad Libs, when you say put a verb, you see put a verb here, and you see put a noun here. Those are just the parameters at the top of your function, and everything inside the block is a placeholder. It's a placeholder that's making a request for information. And when you call your function, you fill in the Mad Libs. You fill in the Mad Libs. Medium and Fry says that would be a pretty cool coding challenge for functions. Make a Mad Libs function? Yeah. Manny Manatee says, what's a Mad Lib? So a Mad Lib is a block of text. It's usually supposed to be funny. Mad Libs are usually very funny because what you do is you have a block of text that tells a story. But certain parts of the text have been cut out. Like if you cut out a noun from a sentence, you want to request a random noun from a person who does not have context. So if you said I saw a monkey at the zoo, and that was your sentence, and you took out the word monkey and said noun, or you said animal or mythical creature or something, and you didn't specify that animal had to be a real animal. You just say animal, and someone says unicorn. The sentence becomes, I saw a unicorn at the zoo. That was a Mad Lib. And it was meant to be a humorous experience between two people, or you could do it singularly, just it'll ask you for a series of values, and then you plug those values into the story. And they're often dirty, or ridiculous, or make just a little bit of sense. Sam says, my mom took a big bite of poop from my butt. Exactly. That's a Mad Lib. That's a Mad Lib. Izzy says, I saw a unicorn at the zoo. Diabolical. That's exactly right.
It's all those dabs.
It's all those dabs. I can't control it. Bull says, hey Diabolical, I appreciate you taking the time to do this for us. Hey, it's no problem. I appreciate all of you. I said earlier in the stream, anybody who didn't catch the beginning of the stream, I hope you go back. There were a lot of people here who felt that they understood functions, who learned important fundamentals from this. And I'm not trying to toot my own horn here. I'm trying to say that these are the problems that I have seen in the community. I have seen problems understanding parameters. I have seen problems understanding function returns. And I have seen problems understanding scope. And those are the three big things we hit today. Even if you feel like you understand them, please watch me on 2 times just to check it out. Just to check it out, to make sure you understand it all. Why we return. Why we use parameters. Why we try to keep our functions as pure as possible unless they're our script that is supposed to manipulate the DOM or data. Count the Shell says, I'll try to check it out tomorrow. Spaced repetition is the key to understanding and success. That's exactly right. Coughs said, can confirm I learned some stuff and thanks. No problem, Coughs. I'm happy to do it. Earlier in the stream I said, this is what fulfills me. I love doing this. I love coming here and I love watching Coughs go, holy shit! That was Coughs' reaction, was holy shit! I loved that. I loved that. I love that light bulb moment. God, best thing in the world. Sam said it. Best thing in the world. Thank you, Sam. Thank you, Sam. Sam says, I will check it out. Sammy Ali. Is that Sammy Ali? Sammy Ali? It might be Sammy Ali. Says, I will check it out. Thank you, Sammy Ali. Appreciate it. Koff says, I love coming here for a change of pace. Thank you. You're welcome. You're welcome. I love those aha moments. Love those aha moments. All right, so we got 5 minutes left. Everybody, feel free to take a break real quick. Feel free to do a stretch. We're just chilling. We're just chilling for 5 minutes. Learned a whole bunch about recursion. Learned a whole bunch about functions. It's a beautiful day to learn JavaScript. It truly is. Way to go, everyone. Way to go to everyone who stuck through this very difficult question that I'm sure some people here felt was going to be fairly simple. Let's just talk about recursion really quick. But it turned into something so much more. It turned into something that really tackled all the fundamentals of JavaScript functions. It was great. I'm so happy that we did that. I was just talking to Sherry yesterday. I was like, I should probably do a lesson on functions. And then it just happened organically. It happened organically that we tackled all the core concepts of functions. Let's see. Let me see. I want to catch up here. Manny says we'll watch it tomorrow. Hopefully. Thank you so much, Manny. Really appreciate it. Aaron out here tuning in from the UK. Really appreciate it. M. Sabam says I do like the chill vibe here. Thank you so much, Em. Thank you so much. I want that chill vibe. I want chill but excited about JavaScript. I don't want to be intense. I want to be chill, but I want that aha. I want that aha so bad. I crave it. Sam says, interviewers will love hearing you talk about your teaching experiences in the near future. I think I'm going to have to be a DevRel. I think I'm going to be developer relations. I think so. I think that's where I'm meant to be. K-Koff says, shit, I said K-Koff. Damn it! Coughs. Koff says, everyone retweet, which I bet is going to get rescinded now. Damn! I was doing so well. Koff says, everyone retweet. Thank you for that. I would appreciate a retweet. If people can retweet, I would really appreciate it. It'll help me. If you haven't endorsed me on LinkedIn, I'm trying to get through all my endorsements. I'll endorse you back. Really appreciate it. If you hear about any dev relation jobs, if you hear about any DevRel or developer advocates, devocados, if you hear about those jobs, let me know, because I think that's where I'm meant to be. And I'll always keep doing this stream as long as I can. I'll be doing this stream. Let's see. Okay, Koff says open a newsletter for a sticker raffle. That's what I have to do. I have to start opening some raffles. That's what I have to do. P2 Drizzle said, has you talked about recursion in past videos? Definitely need help on recursion, so I might go back and check out some old videos. Nope, no more on recursion. This is the first time we tackled recursion. Except for in one Code Wars. We had a Code Wars where I was like, let's do recursion. I didn't even solve it. Dev Henry solved it. Dev Henry solved it before I could with recursion. So, no, it's just this one so far. If you ever have questions, though, you can always come back and always ask them. I'm always down to talk. I'm here to talk. I don't have a problem with it. I love talking. Let's see. No experience with Figma. Sorry about that. No experience with Figma, Count the Shells. All right, everybody. We're getting ready. We're getting ready for our raid with Leon. Ooh, everybody take your stretches. Stretch out in this main time. We're going to raid. We're going to get over there. Thank you so much, everybody, for coming by. Thank you for stopping in at the end, Princess Peachy Peaches. Thank you, everybody. Really appreciate it. Yeah, we got to get more people. Everybody, when you see these, share them up. Leon expects more people from me. We got to share them. We got to share them on Twitter. Share them wherever you need to. 4 more. Come on. We can get there. It's 3:29. We still got a little bit of time. Turn up the music. Get that vibe ready. Go in there with excitement. Let's do it. We're going to raid. Learn with Leon. We're at 50. Yeah. Let's do it. Oh shit, I fucked up the raid command. I'm too high. I totally typed his name wrong. Alright, let's get over there. Let's do it. No, you're all the best. Thank you so much, everyone. Oh man. That was fun.